Chapter 1. Holy T. I got called a good guy again. Li Yundong mumbled in a drunken stupor. Damn it, you're still trying to fool me with this kind of old crap. Li Yundong couldn't help but feel depressed and miserable when he thought of the confession he'd made this morning outside the school building. Am I that pathetic? I got called a good guy 21 times in my first year of college? Damn it, what's so great about that? I'll find someone prettier than all of you one day. The elevator door opened with a ding. Li Yundong staggered out of the elevator and arrived at the door of his rented apartment. He pulled out his keys in a drunken stupor. His parents had divorced when he was a child. His father had found a Caucasian to lead a happy life abroad. His mother, unwilling to be left alone, had also found a Caucasian and immigrated to Australia early on to lead a life of corruption. Li Yundong had been left alone in China to collect some relief money. The undisciplined Li Yundong had been undisciplined since the third year of junior high. Naturally, it was impossible for him to get into a good school. Tiannan University was the best school he could get into, but it was only a second-rate or third-rate university in China. Although it was a second-rate or third-rate university, the arts department was very famous. It had produced many stars, and the school was filled with beautiful women. Li Yundong, a virgin, was dazzled by the sight of them. Unfortunately, according to the scientific theory of attraction between the sexes, places with beautiful women were often filled with handsome men. Li Yundong wasn't ugly, but he wasn't good-looking either. Nowadays, men were either handsome or weird-looking. If you met someone with average looks, then sorry, if you didn't get called a good guy, who else would you get called a good guy? Li Yundong was also a proud and arrogant person. All he pursued were the prettiest girls in his class, department, and school. Therefore, he had been called a good guy 21 times in a year. He had been defeated again and again, and had become a laughingstock in the school. Thinking of the mocking faces around him, especially those who laughed at him like a toad trying to eat swan meat, Li Yundong gnashed his teeth in hatred. Bastard! Li Yundong stood at the door, raised his arms and roared. The key fell to the ground with a clatter. Li Yundong squinted his eyes and bent down, only to find a fiery red vixen lying in front of his house. Its hind legs were stained with blood. Obviously, it had been injured. The vixen turned its head and licked its wounds while looking at Li Yundong pitifully. Li Yundong immediately felt sympathy for the vixen. He picked it up and asked, "Does your master not want you anymore?" "How pitiful." "Sigh, it's the same for me. My parents don't want me either. Everyone looks down on me. Everyone despises me. Are you the same? Don't worry, don't cry. I'll take care of you. I won't abandon you." As soon as he entered the door, he saw the living room. The living room was connected to the balcony, and there was a floor-to-ceiling window between the balcony and the living room. The window was covered with a thin screen. In the middle of the living room, there was a glass coffee table. Under the coffee table was a carpet, and on top of it was a PS2. Next to the game console was a stack of game discs, and next to the game discs was a half-empty glass of cold water. After carrying the little fox into his house, Li Yundong could no longer support his drunken body. His head tilted to one side, and he collapsed on the carpet next to the coffee table. Before long, he was snoring loudly. The little fox in his arms, which had been trembling all over at first, gradually calmed down. Its eyes shone brighter and brighter under the cold moonlight. It nuzzled Li Yundong's chin with the tip of its nose, trying to see if he was really asleep. After a few attempts, the little fox realized that Li Yundong was sleeping deeper than a dead pig. It curled up into a ball and began to emit a faint green light. The green light seeped into Li Yundong's body like countless gossamer threads, then slowly swam back into the little fox's body. The green gossamer threads turned fiery red, and when they swam back into the little fox's body, they swam back out and turned green again. The little fox did this a few times. After extracting yang qi from Li Yundong's body a few times, it was noticeably more energetic. The wounds on its claws were no longer bleeding. Suddenly, it leaped out of Li Yundong's arms, spun around in a circle, and instantly transformed into a girl in a fiery red dress. The girl was about 15 or 16 years old and about 1.65 meters tall. She had a pair of bright eyes that were extremely intelligent. Her pitch-black eyes seemed to be able to emit light, and with a slight movement, she seemed to be in a daze. After looking around the room cautiously for a while, she let out a sigh of relief and patted her chest. "That was close," she murmured to herself. I almost died here. My Shifu worked so hard to steal the Renyuan Jindan for me. If I had died here before I could take it, wouldn't that have been a great injustice? The little fox looked at Li Yundong from head to toe, then tilted her head and stared at the drunken boy who was hugging her. For some reason, she felt a twinge of emotion in her heart. This guy's life is very similar to mine. The little fox sighed and rose to her feet. She wanted to leave this place. But then she thought about it again. Her enemies were after her, and she hadn't recovered from her injuries yet. What if they found out that she was going to leave this place? Well, I might as well take the Renyuan Jindan right now. The little fox took out a round golden pill that was about the size of a fingernail. She held it in her palm as if it were a priceless treasure. As soon as she took out the golden core, the whole room shone with a golden light, as if it was brightly lit. The little fox had just stolen the Jindan, but she had been hunted down by her enemies. That was why she hadn't had the chance to consume and digest the Jindan. Just as the thought crossed her mind, she caught a glimpse of 2 streaks of green light flashing outside the French window. Her body tensed up, and she looked out the window in horror. Oh no, oh no! Why are they chasing me again? The little fox's face was pale with fright. Why are these guys so haunting me? No matter where I go, they'll still be able to track me down. The little fox's mind raced like lightning, but she could feel 2 extremely powerful auras rapidly approaching her. Just as she was about to panic, her eyes suddenly fell on Li Yundong, who was next to her. She suddenly thought, could it be that the power of the Jindan powder in my hand has attracted the pursuers? The little fox reacted quickly. She rushed to Li Yundong's side, pinched his cheek, and tossed the Jindan into his mouth. Then, she transformed into a little fox and hid in his arms. The little fox's plan was brilliant. She had dared to toss the Renyuan Jindan into Li Yundong's mouth because she wanted to take advantage of his yang qi. Yang qi was the purest yang qi in the world. It was the most essential part of the human body's yang energy. It was hidden in the Hui-yin acupoint. Only when it was seduced by the unique yin qi of a woman would it leave the acupoint. This kind of yang qi had many uses. One of them was that it could be used to conceal many auras, such as extreme yin qi, filthy qi, and even the unique spiritual qi emitted by immortal pills and divine artifacts. The little fox tossed the Renyuan Jindan into Li Yundong's mouth, but it wasn't worried that he would swallow it. First of all, the Renyuan Jindan wasn't like the dove chocolate that melted in one's mouth. Second, Li Yundong was clearly drunk. A person in such a state wouldn't swallow anything in their mouth unless it was mixed with water. Not only could Li Yundong's yang qi conceal the immortal qi of the Renyuan Jindan, it could also conceal the little fox's yin qi. It was killing 2 birds with 1 stone. As expected, just as the little fox jumped into Li Yundong's arms, the 2 streaks of green light flying in from outside the window suddenly stopped. 2 silhouettes appeared on the balcony. The silhouettes were graceful and graceful. Li Yundong could vaguely make out the silhouettes of 2 women. Strange. Why did they suddenly disappear? One of the women said in a low voice, her voice cold. Sister Zi Yuan, could it be that we're chasing the wrong person? A more lively and innocent voice asked. That's impossible, the cold woman said flatly. Then I'll go in and check it out. We were chasing this house when we suddenly lost track of them. The girl with the lively voice said. At first, the little fox was so proud of its bright idea that it even raised its tail. But when it heard that the girl who was talking was going to barge in to check it out, it was so scared that it curled up into a ball. Trembling violently, it didn't even dare to breathe too loudly. Nonsense, the other woman with the cold voice said in a low voice. How can cultivators disturb the mortals? But how are we going to explain this to them when we get back? The girl with the lively voice retorted. For a moment, the 2 women on the balcony fell silent. The little fox was shocked and scared. Her heart was in a mess. She kept praying, Grandpa Tian, please leave quickly. Please don't come in. I'll kowtow to you. But just as she was muttering to herself, Li Yundong suddenly groaned. His mouth was dry and he wanted to swallow his saliva, but the Renyuan Jindan was still in his mouth. How could he possibly swallow it? The round Jindan rolled down his esophagus, causing a pained expression to appear on his face. Groggily, he propped himself up and reached out his hand to search for something on the coffee table next to him. Chapter 2. She wanted to stop Li Yundong, but she didn't dare to move. She didn't want to be discovered, because there were two famous cultivators outside the window. Li Yundong swallowed a few mouthfuls of water. His throat felt a lot better. A satisfied smile appeared on his face, and he fell back to sleep. The two women outside the window heard the commotion in the room. After a while, the woman with the cold voice said, "Forget it. It doesn't look like it's here. Let's go back first. That vixen can't escape us anyway." The woman with the lively voice sighed. "That's all we can do. What a bummer." With that, the two women turned into two beams of green light and left. Even though Su Chan was on the verge of going crazy, she forced herself to endure it and lay motionlessly in Li Yundong's arms. About 10 minutes later, the two beams of green light returned to the window. After a while, the woman with the cold voice sighed. "It looks like it's really not here. Let's go." The disappointment in her voice was unspeakable. Once again, the two women turned into two beams of green light and left. Only then did Little Fox jump out of Li Yundong's arms. She turned around and transformed into her human form. She pounced on Li Yundong, baring her fangs and claws. "You bastard! Pay me back for my Renyuan Jindan!" She screamed hysterically. Little Fox sat on Li Yundong's body and reached for his neck with both hands. She gritted her teeth, wanting nothing more than to kill Li Yundong and cut his stomach open. But just as she was about to pinch Li Yundong, a force suddenly repelled her. She was flipped to the side. Tears welled up in Little Fox's eyes as she watched Li Yundong's body begin to glow with a rainbow light. Her heart was filled with grief and indignation. She knew that the Renyuan Jindan was beginning to dissolve in Li Yundong's body. The medicine was beginning to take effect, attacking Li Yundong's meridians and flesh. Little Fox thought back to all the hardships she had gone through to steal the Renyuan Jindan. She had thought that it would turn her from a three-tailed fox spirit into a six-tailed fox spirit. Who would have thought that she would end up benefiting this guy? Especially when she saw the strange light flowing around Li Yundong's body, the little fox's lips curled up higher and higher, tears welling up in her eyes. "I've been hiding with the elixir, but I don't even have the time to digest it." Now he had worked so hard for such a long time, but it was all for this guy's benefit. The more Little Fox thought about it, the more wronged she felt. Finally, she burst into tears. This time, she had no choice but to throw caution to the wind. She was no longer afraid of attracting the two pursuers. She could only cry her heart out like a pear blossom in the rain. Although the little fox's cries were loud and clear, the reinforced concrete house was like a tight cage. Not a single sound could be heard, and the two terrifying pursuers did not appear again. After crying for a while, the little fox's cries became softer and sobbed non-stop. A rumbling sound came from its stomach. She was hungry. Come to think of it, he had not slept for several days while being hunted, let alone eaten. Humans are iron, and rice is steel. Monsters also need to eat and eat. The little fox glared hatefully at Li Yundong. "If this guy hadn't swallowed the Renyuan Jindan, I would have eaten him up right now." The little fox wiped away her tears and sniffled. Her eyes were bloodshot from crying, and she looked around the house, looking for something to eat. After a while, the little fox saw a cup of water on the coffee table. She picked it up and saw that there was not even half a cup of water left. Li Yundong had drunk it all. The little fox smashed the cup of water at Li Yundong. A gust of qi shot out of Li Yundong's body and knocked the cup away. When Su Chan saw this, she knew that this was a sign that all the medicinal power in Li Yundong's body had been absorbed. His qi was at its peak. She couldn't help but cry again. After crying for a while, the little fox could no longer stand the torment of hunger. Her nose sniffled and she began to look around the house for food. As she searched, she murmured, "Master was right. The people in this world are worse than the one before them. I just met one, and he swallowed my Jindan." It was said that dogs had good noses, but the little fox's nose was no less good. Although the fridge door was tightly shut, the little fox still managed to follow the smell to the kitchen. The little fox had grown up in the mountains and cultivated in the Fox Zen school. She had never been to the secular world before, so she only knew a little about the world. She had no idea what a fridge was. After pondering for a while, the little fox cautiously opened the fridge door. There was a flash of light, and all kinds of food appeared in the fridge. The little fox couldn't figure out why the fridge would light up when she opened the door, but she was not in the mood to think about it. She couldn't care less about her sadness. After a final sob, she began to gorge on the food. After Li Yundong swallowed the Renyuan Jindan, the medicinal power of the Jindan rampaged through his body, attacking his blood vessels and flesh. It could be said that he was reborn and reborn. This was the equivalent of an enlightened monk in a wuxia novel using the Marrow Cleansing Sutra and the Tendon Changing Sutra to cleanse his marrow and tendons. When the little fox was full, she went back to Li Yundong and sat cross-legged in front of him. She stared at him resentfully. Li Yundong had been living alone since the second year of high school. He was lazy and undisciplined, so he was a little chubby. As the medicinal power of the Renyuan Jindan flowed through his body, the little fox could clearly see the rapid trembling of Li Yundong's muscles with her naked eyes. Especially the veins under his skin. It was as if there were countless little mice drilling in and out of his body, making his skin look like waves, rising and falling one after another. The little fox knew that this was a sign that the medicinal power had reached its boiling point. Not only could this kind of medicinal power cleanse the marrow and tendons, but it could also replenish the yuan qi that the human body lacked. Li Yundong's qi was vigorous. The yuan-yang qi in his body was stimulated by the medicinal power of the Jindan, and it gradually flowed out of the huiyin acupoint. A tall tent slowly rose from his crotch. The little fox complained bitterly to herself. Her heart was full of regret. But when her eyes fell on the tent beneath Li Yundong, she suddenly froze. An idea popped into her mind. This guy swallowed my Renyuan Jindan. Why don't I wait for the medicinal power to spread through his body, then slowly guide him into cultivation? When he succeeds in the foundation establishment phase, I can harvest the yang qi to replenish the yin qi, drain him dry, and absorb his energy for my own use. Isn't this much more useful than swallowing the Renyuan Jindan myself? The little fox couldn't help but smile at the thought. Her foxtail wagged. This was the most critical moment for Li Yundong's medicinal power to circulate through his body. The little fox changed her mind and took the initiative to stand guard for Li Yundong. But she didn't expect that the medicinal power would last for 3 days. The dozens of hours of waiting was too much for the little fox to handle. Add to that the fear and anxiety she'd been feeling for the past few days, and she couldn't take it anymore. Her body tilted to one side and she dozed off next to Li Yundong. Just as the little fox was about to fall asleep, the colorful glow around Li Yundong's body slowly faded away. He crawled up from the carpet in a daze and rubbed his swollen head, which felt like it was about to split open. Then, he stretched his hand out to support himself. When he did, he felt something warm and soft. Li Yundong froze. He tilted his head and looked down. His head buzzed, and he felt like his head was about to explode. A girl lay next to him. Her hair was black, and her face was as beautiful as a painting. Her lips were cherry red, and her eyelashes were thick and long. Her eyes were closed, and her body was curled up into a ball, as if she was dreaming of something bad. Li Yundong's hand was pressed against the girl's chest. Not only did the girl not wake up, but she even wrapped her arms around him. "Master," she murmured, "I know I'm wrong. I shouldn't have run down the mountain without permission. Please don't punish me." "What? What's going on?" Li Yundong's mind went blank. He was frozen to the spot, as if he'd been petrified. He couldn't move an inch, and his body was drenched in sweat. Why is there such a beautiful girl next to me? Li Yundong tried hard to recall what had happened before he fell asleep, but the alcohol in his system only made him vaguely remember confessing his love to a beautiful girl at school. She rejected him, and he ran to a roadside stall to get drunk. He couldn't remember anything after that. He couldn't even remember how he got home. Could it be that this beautiful girl sent me back? Li Yundong couldn't help but look down at the girl next to him. The girl was wearing an antique long dress. The material was like silk, but the girl's skin was far more delicate than the smooth fabric of the dress. Her skin was as white as snow, and because she was curled up, he couldn't tell how tall she was. However, from the place where Li Yundong was pressing, he could feel that the softness that he couldn't grasp with one hand was obviously very good. Since when did I have a romantic encounter like this? Li Yundong's mind was a mess. His manly instincts made him reluctant to leave the girl's softness, and he even wanted to explore other parts of her body. However, his phone suddenly rang, and he withdrew his hand from the girl's chest with a guilty conscience. Li Yundong had just pressed the answer button when he heard a voice on the other side of the phone. "Li Yundong, do you know that you've been absent for 3 days? Do you still want to get credits this semester? Do you still want to graduate?" Li Yundong froze for a moment. Is it class rep? Of course. Who else could it be? The voice on the other side of the phone suddenly rose an octave. Li Yundong was completely confused. Had he been drunk for 3 days? He smiled sheepishly and asked carefully, class rep, what's the date today? Today is May 23rd. Are you stupid? The voice on the other side of the phone had obviously calmed down, but it was obvious that another storm was brewing. Li Yundong turned his head to look at the clock next to the television in the living room. He was surprised to find that he had slept for 3 days. Okay. I'll be at school right away. Li Yundong quickly hung up the phone. He rushed to the bathroom to brush his teeth and wash his face. Then, he hastily changed out of his wine-stained clothes and put on a set of blue casual clothes. Then, he hurried out of the house. On the way to school, Li Yundong's mind was filled with question marks. Who was that beauty in my house? Why is she in my house? Could it be that I did something dirty and violent yesterday? Translator, Nyoibo Studio Editor. Nyoibo Studio. After Li Yundong left the house, Lan Weihu rolled over in her sleep. When she opened her eyes, she saw that the room was empty. Her face turned pale with fright. Could it be that the guy who swallowed my Renyuan Jindan has run away? Lan Weihu's hands and feet were as cold as ice. If I let him run away, then all my plans would have been for nothing. But she quickly touched the carpet beside her and found that it was still warm, which meant that he hadn't gone too far. She calmed down a little and sniffed. His scent was still in the air. Chapter 3. When the girl saw him, she immediately walked up to him and said fiercely, Li Yundong, you've been absent from class for 3 days for no reason. Do you know that during these 3 days, you just happened to run into a teacher from the education committee who came to inspect you? And you just happened to come to our class. Your absenteeism has caused our class to be deducted honor points. As the girl rattled on, Li Yundong grimaced as he listened. In his heart, he was very disapproving. Class honor points, he thought. Does she think I'm still in high school? The more the girl talked, the more excited she became. Li Yundong wanted to roll his eyes, but there was nothing he could do about it. The girl's name was Sun Li, and she was famous for being an excellent student in the Chinese department of Tiannan University. She had received a special scholarship as soon as she graduated, and she had even been received by the mayor. Li Yundong had heard that Sun Li had been a top student in high school. Unfortunately, she had failed her college entrance exams and only managed to get into a second-tier university. There had been a number of top-tier universities that had been willing to accept her, but she had lost her temper and decided to enroll in a second-tier university like Tiannan University. Sun Li was a typical Sichuan morning pepper. She had an oval-shaped face and a decent appearance. However, she always wore a pair of black-rimmed glasses and an old-fashioned headband on her head all day long. She also had a very old-fashioned hairband on her head. Li Yundong suddenly wondered what she would look like if she took off her glasses and headband. No matter what she looks like, she definitely won't be as pretty as the girl I just saw at home. When Li Yundong thought of the girl with an unknown background at home, he couldn't help but have one thought after another. Who on earth is this girl? Oh no, I left her alone at home. She won't lose anything, right? She's so pretty. She wouldn't steal anything, would she? Sigh. If such a pretty girl steals, I'll admit defeat. Li Yundong's mind wandered. He thought about Sun Li's identity, and then he wondered if something had happened between them when he was drunk. His mind was as muddled as a pot of boiling porridge. Sun Li had been talking to herself for a while, but when she saw that Li Yundong's mind was wandering, she slapped the book in her hand on his chest. Hey, she yelled. It would have been better if she hadn't hit him. Once she did, the Jindan Zhenqi in his body immediately bounced back automatically. Even a living person like Little Fox could be bounced back a meter, let alone a book. Pa! The book in Sun Li's hand was sent flying. Sun Li was also shocked by the force, and the book in her hand fell to the ground with a crash. Ouch! Sun Li cried out when she saw the book fall to the ground. She didn't even have the time to scold Li Yundong. She quickly squatted down and picked up the book. Of course, Li Yundong wasn't aware of the changes that had just occurred to him. He assumed that Sun Li had dropped the books because she hadn't been holding them properly. He snorted inwardly. This is karma, huh? With such a shrewish personality, I really don't know who will marry you in the future. Even though he was harboring evil intentions, He still squatted down to help Sunli pick up the books. Li Yundong picked up the 2 psychology textbooks, stood up, and handed them to Sunli. Sunli, on the other hand, thought that Li Yundong was the one who had purposely knocked her book out of her hand. She glared at him and said, "How can you be so uncouth?" Li Yunyong was furious. "What? I'm uncouth? If I were uncouth, I would have stepped on your books twice. Why would I help you pick them up?" Sun Li's eyebrows shot up in anger. She couldn't help but speak in her native dialect. "Go ahead and try that." Li Yundong was so angry that he was seeing stars. His chest felt like it was being suffocated. He glared at Sun Li, his face red and his neck red. Sun Li saw that his eyes were bloodshot, and the veins in them looked like they were about to explode one by one. It was a horrifying sight to behold, but she didn't budge an inch. She continued to stare back at Li Yundong. Just as the two of them were glaring at each other, a voice came from the side. "Yo, isn't this our school's confession king?" Li Yundong turned his head around and saw 2 girls standing in front of him. They were looking at him with mocking expressions. Li Yundong's face reddened. One of the girls was the beauty he had confessed to 3 days ago. She was the school belle, Xueqi. Xueqi was tall and slender. Her skin was fair, and her looks were indeed one in a million. She was dressed in a light yellow casual shirt that fluttered in the wind, making her look both fashionable and youthful. She looked at Li Yundong with indifference, as if nothing had happened 3 days ago. However, there was a hint of disdain and contempt in the depths of her eyes. The girl next to her was Ding Nan. She was the one who had mocked Li Yundong earlier. Seeing that Li Yundong wasn't saying anything, Ding Nan laughed again. "Hey, I'm talking to you. Do you know that you're famous now? Your confession video from 2 days ago was the most viewed video on the school forum." Li Yundong was shocked, angry, and embarrassed at the same time. "What did you just say? Who took that video?" Li Yundong glared at Xueqi. "How could you do something like that? How could you be so despicable?" Xueqi's expression didn't change. She just glanced at Li Yundong indifferently. She didn't even open her mouth to defend herself, as if she didn't want to argue with him. Ding Nan said, "Hey, why are you being so fierce? If you're so capable, why don't you go and yell at young Master He? I was the one who took that video. What do you want? You have the guts to confess, but you don't have the guts to let people watch it? A toad wants to eat swan meat. Why don't you take a piss and look at yourself in the mirror? Look at you. Even if you spend money, I won't be willing to accompany you. Don't disturb our Xueqi in the future. Do you understand?" Even a clay figurine had a temper, not to mention that after Li Yundong's marrow and tendons had been cleansed by the Renyuan Jindan, his blood and qi had reached an incredible level. When a person was full of blood and qi, it was easy for them to get angry. When a person got angry easily, they would often get into a fight over trivial matters, let alone such a humiliation. Li Yundong felt a wave of heat rush from his lower abdomen to his chest. After rolling and boiling in his chest for a while, suddenly, there was a pop sound, as if it had broken through a barrier in his chest and then rushed straight to the top of his head. Li Yundong's hair rushed straight to the top of his head with this aura, and with a whoosh, they all stood up. His eyes were almost about to split open, and the blood vessels in his eyes were about to explode. The breath in his chest was like rolling thunder, and he spurted out of his mouth. "Say that again if you have the guts." No matter how arrogant Ding Nan was, and no matter how calm Xueqi was, they were girls after all. Li Yundong, who had been transformed by the Jindan, was angry. His eyes were like lightning, and his momentum was like a tiger's. Even a strong man would tremble in fear, let alone a weak woman. Ding Nan and Xueqi were so scared that they both took a step back. There was fear in Ding Nan's eyes. Although there was also fear in Xueqi's eyes, there was also surprise, but soon the surprise turned into anger. Xueqi secretly squeezed Ding Nan's palm. Ding Nan turned to look at her, as if she had understood something. "Hey, what are you doing?" "This is the campus." Ding Nan shouted, Someone is going to kill me." It was the time to prepare for class in the morning, so there were many students on campus. As soon as they heard the shout, many students gathered around. Ding Nan saw that there were more people around, and her courage was boosted again. She put her hands on her hips and sneered. "Come on, aren't you very arrogant? Why are you clenching your fists so tightly? You want to hit me? Come on, Hit me here. If you don't dare to hit me, you're not a man. Humph, look at you. Even if you confess to all the women in the world, no one would like you. Li Yundong was furious. He strode forward, raised his fist, and was about to punch Ding Nan. Ding Nan was so scared that she screamed and pulled Zhou Qin back. She and Zhou Qin were both very beautiful girls, so there were naturally many protectors on campus. Some of the boys who usually admired the two girls stepped forward bravely. Hey, little bastard, what do you want? A tall boy stood in front of Li Yundong. He was the head of the school's sports department. His name was Wu Hui, and he looked very much like Wu Qilong. Therefore, there were also infatuated girls on campus who called him Wu Qilong. Wu Hui had been fiercely pursuing the campus belle, Zhou Qin. Seeing such a good opportunity to show off, how could he not step forward bravely? But as soon as he finished speaking, Li Yundong, who was half a head away from him, grabbed him by the collar and lifted him up. What am I doing? I'm going to F***CK your mother. Li Yundong's furious look scared the students around him, especially when they saw how he lifted the 1.8-meter-tall sports director with one hand and lifted him off the ground. F***CK, Schwarzenegger. A boy gasped. Wu Hui was so angry that he couldn't breathe. His face was purple and red. He forced himself to say, Let go. Li Yundong grinned, and his slightly plump and gentle face became ferocious. Okay, I'll let go. Just as Li Yundong was about to throw Wu Hui out, he heard a girl's exclamation from the crowd. Her voice was full of joy. You're here, she said. The voice was like a white spirit in an empty valley, but also like a silver bell in the wind. It was indescribably clear and pleasing to the ear. When people heard it, they subconsciously looked in the direction of the voice. Who could speak so beautifully? Li Yundong also turned his head, but his eyes suddenly widened, and the hair on his head suddenly fell down. This girl was the one who had appeared by his side after he had been drunk. This girl was wearing an ancient red dress. It was like a costume from a period drama. If ordinary girls wore it, they would only feel awkward. However, this girl had an indescribable classical charm. She was like a beauty who had walked out of a painting. Chapter 4. Never in a million years would Li Yundong have thought that the girl would chase him all the way to school. His mind started to wander. Why is she here? Did something really happen between us? Is she here to get even with me? What should I do? The little fox finally found Li Yundong, the Renyuan Jindan that could move in front of her eyes. She couldn't contain the joy in her heart, but she quickly regained her composure and raised her guard. No, I can't let myself get carried away. If I give myself away and he notices that something is wrong, I'll be in deep trouble. The little fox remembered what her master had taught her back in the mountains. If you want him to ignore you, you only have to use one trick, and you'll be invincible. And that is act pitiful. The little fox resisted the urge to rush forward and grab Li Yundong. Instead, she took small, quick steps and approached Li Yundong with a resentful look on her face. She stared at Li Yundong with a pair of big sparkling eyes that could almost melt a bronze arhat. Li Yundong shook his head in disbelief. Wu Hui's eyes widened as he stared at the girl in front of him. I can't believe there's such a pretty girl out there. I can't believe there's such a pretty girl out there. The little fox's beauty was devastating to men. For thousands of years, no one had ever heard of a mortal being able to resist the seduction of a fox spirit. Be it King Cruel of Xia, King Zhou of Shang, or King Yu of Zhou, all of them had succumbed to fox spirits like Meishi, Daji, and Bao Si. Even the emperors of ancient times had succumbed to this, let alone a university student in an ivory tower. Wu Hui had just suffered a great loss, but he seemed to have forgotten all about it. His face was flushed red as he yelled at the little fox. Hey, pretty girl, this guy is not a good person. He even tried to hit me just now. Li Yundong didn't even look at him. He pressed a hand on Wu Hui's head and gave him a shove. Scram. The surrounding students watched Li Yundong and the little fox as if they were watching a show. They whispered to each other, trying to guess the relationship between the two. I think Li Yundong must have done something bad to this pretty girl. I support you, brother. Look at that guilty look on his face. F***CKU. Are you guys blind? Isn't this pretty girl the best of the best? Compared to her, Fan Bingbing was trash. How could she like Li Yundong? F***CK. You're the one who's blind. Didn't you hear me say that Li Yundong did something bad to her? F***CK. Is there any logical connection between being blind and hearing what you're saying? Don't quarrel, don't quarrel. Watch the show. These people were all talking about it, but without exception, they all guessed that this girl was here to cause trouble for Li Yundong, and that Li Yundong must have done something guilty to this beauty. Some of the boys looked at Su Chan's pitiful face, and their sense of justice swelled. They swore to themselves, if Li Yundong really did something wrong to me, I'll give him a good beating even if I have to. But what happened very quickly made everyone's eyes pop out. Why did you leave just like that? Su Chan asked softly, tugging at his sleeve with her fingers. She lowered her head and whispered, "Why did you leave just like that?" Li Yundong was also feeling uneasy. When he heard Su Chan's words, his mind went blank. "Huh?" he said, unable to react. Su Chan raised her head and stared at Li Yundong pitifully. "You don't want me anymore?" Su Chan's words had been too soft, so not everyone had heard them. But this time, they heard it loud and clear. "No way! You're throwing yourself at me. Are you kidding me?" The crowd was in an uproar. All of a sudden, the boys collectively mutated into a group of animals in heat. They stared at Li Yundong with bloodshot eyes. As long as the boy said no, they would shout, "I want it, I want it. I want you, pretty girl." Li Yundong's mind was a mess, and his IQ had plummeted. All he could do was stare at Su Chan, speechless. Tears began to well up in Su Chan's eyes. She was about to burst into tears when Li Yundong snapped out of his daze. All right. Don't cry, don't cry. We'll talk when we get back." Ding Nan's eyes were wide open, and her face was filled with disbelief. "Hey, do you know who this guy is?" Su Chan pressed her hand against Li Yundong's forehead and shoved Wu Hui away without even looking at him. "Get lost!" Su Chan yelled. Ding Nan tripped. She might not be as pretty as Zhou Qin, but she was still the prettiest girl in the school. She had never been humiliated like this before. She sat on the ground and stared at Su Chan and Li Yundong in a daze. Sun Li, on the other hand, was much calmer than Li Yundong. "Hey, are you guys filming a Qiang Yao drama here? If you are, please go somewhere else. This is a school." Li Yundong smiled at Sun Li. He had no choice. Sun Li was the class monitor. She might not be a part of the system, but she shouldn't treat a bean bun like it was nothing. His credits for this semester were now in the hands of this little chili pepper. The class monitor's authority wasn't that great, but it wasn't exactly small either. It was her job to keep track of everyone's attendance every day. If this little pepper decided to use her power to get back at Li Yundong, his entire semester would have been wasted. Li Yundong didn't know how he was supposed to face Su Chan, but it was obvious that he was secretly pleased that such a beautiful woman had thrown herself at him. He cleared his throat and said to Su Chan, "Wait for me at home. I'll talk to you when I get back." After that, he pretended to be unaffected by Su Chan's charms and walked into the school building. But as soon as he sat down in the classroom, a fragrant scent wafted into his nose. It was Su Chan, who had followed him like a bullied wife. Li Yundong might have put on a facade in front of everyone, but deep down, he was actually hoping that Su Chan would follow him into the classroom. "Why did you come in here?" Li Yundong asked in surprise. Su Chan thought that Li Yundong was going to kick her out. Tears streamed down her cheeks. "Please don't kick me out." Li Yundong's heart melted at the sight of her. "Aya, no one's kicking you out." Su Chan raised her head and stared at Li Yundong. "Really?" Li Yundong nodded. "Of course." Su Chan burst into laughter, her eyes turning into crescent moons. "Chaner is so happy." "Chaner?" Li Yundong asked curiously. Su Chan grinned from ear to ear and pointed at the tip of her nose. "My master named me Su Chan," she said. "Your master?" Li Yundong asked curiously. Su Chan's heart skipped a beat. "Yeah," she said, feigning innocence. Thankfully, Li Yundong didn't pursue the matter. "I'm Li Yundong," he said with a smile. The students in the classroom who were listening to their conversation grimaced in pain. How come they didn't even know the name of this couple when they were so close to each other? Some of the students were even more indignant. How could such a beautiful girl fall for the most useless king of confessions in our school? How am I not as good-looking as him? How am I not as good-looking as him? How am I not as talented as him? How am I not as good as his family background? What does this beautiful girl like about him? Is there still justice in this world? Is there still law in this world? Su-chan had finally achieved the first step of her goal, to stay by this guy's side. And now she was going to achieve the second step, to hold on to this guy tightly. Su-chan thought to herself, Master also said that if you want to capture a man's heart, you must first be obedient to him. But how can I be obedient to him? He didn't ask for anything, so what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to be obedient to him? Su-chan thought. Oh my god, I'm so stupid. If he didn't mention it, I would have asked him myself. Yundong, are you cold? Su-chan asked with a fawning smile. Yundong. Li Yundong stared at Su-chan with a strange look on his face. Yundong. Su-chan's voice made him feel like his bones had gone limp. Su-chan stared at Li Yundong timidly. You don't like me calling you that? Li Yundong glanced around the room, only to see the disdainful and jealous gazes of the boys around him. His manly vanity was satisfied. I do. Yundong, are you cold? Su-chan asked, beaming with joy. Li Yundong chuckled inwardly. Tiannan City is a southern city. It's already the end of May. You're asking me if I'm cold? Nope. Li Yundong answered casually. The boy sitting behind Li Yundong shuddered. He couldn't stand Su-chan's bone-chilling voice. I'm going to die from the cold, he grumbled. Of course, Su-chan wasn't going to pay any attention to the guy who was complaining about sour grapes. If he said he was cold, she would snuggle up to him and warm him up. But when he said he wasn't cold, she rolled her eyes and asked, Then, are you hot? Are you hot? Li Yundong didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The classroom was air-conditioned. How could it be hot? Not really. Su-chan's lips curled up into a smile. You're not cold, and you're not hot either. What the hell do you want? But Su-chan was a tenacious person. She was soft on the outside, but tough on the inside. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to steal the Renyuan Jindan. So, are you hungry? As soon as Li Yundong heard her words, his stomach began to growl. He had been attacked by the Renyuan Jindan for 3 days, and his stomach had long been empty. He hadn't felt hungry because he had something on his mind, but now that Su-chan had mentioned it, his stomach immediately revolted. Li Yundong was startled. His stomach rumbled like a drum. The evidence was irrefutable. Li Yundong nodded honestly. Yes, I am. Su-chan was overjoyed. Then I'll buy you something to eat, okay? Li Yundong smiled gratefully. He wasn't used to having such a beautiful woman being so considerate to him. Okay, he said, a little bashfully. Su-chan finally found an opportunity to please him. She was overjoyed and ran out of the classroom. Li Yundong stared at her back. Hey, I didn't give you money, he said. Su-chan ran out of the classroom, attracting the attention of many boys along the way. She rushed out of the campus under the obsessive gazes of the boys. Outside the campus, Su-chan looked around and suddenly realized that she had no idea where to buy something. But that wasn't a problem. She wrinkled her nose and smelled the scent of meat in the air. Then, she followed the scent. There was a food market right next to Tiannan University. Su-chan had followed the scent all the way here, and sure enough, she had found her way here. Even though Su-chan had never been to a food market in the mortal world, she had at least seen a pig run before. She ran to the meat stall with a big grin on her face. She was just about to buy a few pounds of pork when she suddenly remembered something. Fish makes phlegm, and meat makes fire. Li Yundong had swallowed the Renyuan Jindan, so his qi and blood were at their peak. He had already surpassed the limits of what a mortal could achieve. Naturally, the fire in his body was also at its peak. To him, eating meat was absolutely harmful and not beneficial at all. Su-chan was so focused on pleasing Li Yundong that she forgot to consider things from the perspective of a mortal. Do mortals eat raw pork? Fortunately, Su-chan had thought about it from the perspective of cultivation, so she didn't buy a pound of raw pork. Otherwise, Li Yundong would probably be at a loss whether to laugh or cry at the sight of it. Su-chan wandered from the meat stall to the vegetable stall. Since this guy can't eat anything that causes fire, then I'll eat something cool and cool. Fish makes phlegm, meat makes fire, carrots and cabbages keep me safe. Su-chan looked around the vegetable stall and picked out a plump carrot. Then she thought about picking out a handful of cabbages. But then, she thought about it for a moment. I don't eat raw cabbages, so this guy probably won't eat them raw, right? So Su-chan put down the cabbages, looked around, and picked out a long, thick cucumber. She thought back to what the dietotherapy classic had said. Cucumbers are cool in nature, sweet in taste, can stimulate saliva, quench thirst, and relieve heat. Not only can it fill one's stomach, it can also cool one's fire, and it can also be eaten raw. Ha, I'm so smart. Su-chan nodded and wagged her tail, feeling very pleased with herself. The vegetable stall owner was a middle-aged woman with a fierce face. She stared at Su-chan and thought, oh my god, why does she have such a beautiful daughter? She's so seductive. If that man comes looking for her, he'll be squeezed dry by her, won't he? She watched as the men around her salivated at the sight of Su-chan, like cats smelling fish. They wanted nothing more than to swallow Su-chan whole. Humph. Sly fox. The vegetable stall owner snorted coldly and turned around to see that her husband was acting the same way. Furious, she reached out and pulled at her husband's ear. Why don't we call her over so you can have a good look at her? The uncle was obviously a henpecked husband. He smiled apologetically and didn't dare to look at Su-chan again. Instead, he glanced at her out of the corner of his eye. She watched as Su-chan picked up a carrot, then a cucumber, then a carrot. Then, Su-chan's figure gradually disappeared into the distance. Anger rose in her heart, and she secretly felt that something was wrong. However, Su-chan's stunning beauty still made her unable to react in time, and she couldn't help but savor the aftertaste. When Su-chan was far away, the auntie suddenly remembered something. She slapped her thigh and cursed, "That little bitch! Damn vixen! She didn't pay me!" Li Yundong sat in his seat after Su-chan left. His mind was filled with images of Su-chan's every frown and smile. It was obvious that the little fox had already stolen his soul. Someone poked him from behind, and he snapped out of his reverie. Ha! What? Li Yundong, please come up here and repeat what I just said. The teacher at the lectern looked at Li Yundong with a dark expression. Li Yundong walked up to the lectern, his mouth agape and tongue tied. His mind had been wandering, and all he could think of was Su-chan. How was he supposed to say anything? The teacher who taught the history of ancient Chinese literature was a balding middle-aged man. When he saw that Li Yundong was speechless, he immediately flew into a rage. He put on the face of an old man and lectured Li Yundong so hard that he couldn't even raise his head. Just as the Chinese teacher was about to send Li Yundong back to his seat, Su-chan burst into the classroom. Li Yundong watched as Su-chan barged into the classroom. The moment she saw him, her eyes lit up, and she bolted up to the lectern. Li Yundong had a bad feeling about this. But before he could say anything, he saw Su-chan raise her left hand proudly, as if she was taking credit for something. "I bought you a carrot, and I washed it for you," she said in a crisp voice that sounded like a silver bell. "Hurry up and eat it." Su-chan shoved the carrot into Li Yundong's hand without giving him a chance to respond. The Chinese teacher's face darkened, and the temperature in the classroom plummeted. The students in the classroom stared at Su-chan in shock. Li Yundong's back was drenched in sweat. The corners of his eyes twitched, and he kept winking at Su-chan. Su-chan blinked. She looked past Li Yundong and saw the balding Chinese teacher. She smiled sweetly at him and greeted him. Then, she turned to Li Yundong. "Eat it," she said. "Why aren't you eating? You don't like it? It's okay. I have more here." Su-chan raised her right hand again, and said something that would go down in the annals of Tiannan University's history. "You've been. You might be a little hot-tempered lately. So I bought you a cucumber to calm you down." Then, Su-chan proudly raised the big, thick, cucumber in her right hand. At this moment, the classroom was dead silent. Chapter 5. Before Li Yundong could figure out what was going on, the little fox asked in confusion, "What's wrong?" Li Yundong had only taken 2 steps out of the classroom when he heard a burst of earth-shattering laughter. The laughter made Li Yundong's cheeks burn. If there was a hole in the ground, he would have crawled right into it. "Forget it, don't go to this class, don't embarrass yourself here." Li Yundong stomped his feet and dragged the little fox home during class. Along the way, Li Yundong dragged the little fox along with him. No matter how stupid the little fox was, it didn't take long for it to notice that something was wrong. When the two of them entered the house, the little fox lowered her head and looked at Li Yundong timidly. "Did I say something wrong?" she asked meekly. Li Yundong wanted to cry. "What do you think?" The little fox pouted. "I didn't say anything wrong. Cucumbers are cool and sweet. They can lower body heat." He snatched the cucumber out of Su Chan's hand and cursed loudly. "Calm the fire? Calm the F***ck down my F***king fire." Li Yundong yelled. "I'll stab you to death with a cucumber." Frightened by Li Yundong's words, Little Fox raised her head to look at him with tears welling up in her eyes. She quickly lowered her head again, tears streaming down her cheeks. Master was right. The people at the foot of the mountain are so vicious. They call for violence and murder at the drop of a hat, she thought to herself. This guy is the worst. Humph. Just wait until I trick you into reaching the foundation establishment stage. Then I'll squeeze you dry. The little fox's heart was filled with hatred, but her face was filled with a pitiful expression. Li Yundong's heart immediately softened. All right. Stop crying. You're going to look like a kitten if you keep crying. Li Yundong said something cliched. He wanted to reach out and wipe away Su Chan's tears, but the sight of her beautiful yet pitiful face made his heart skip a beat. He lifted his hand, only to stop it midair. Oh! Sensing that Li Yundong's anger had subsided, the little fox boldly raised her head. You don't blame me? She asked. The corner of Li Yundong's mouth twitched. He forced a smile. Nope. Where the hell did this girl come from? How could she be so innocent? Where else would I find a girl like her these days? It was a national treasure. Judging from her tone, she seemed to be from the mountains? Country girl? Tiskaske. Where did this country bumpkin girl come from? Li Yundong let his imagination run wild. But no matter how he thought about it, he couldn't help but think of something that annoyed him. Li Yundong let out a long sigh. Holding his head in his hands, he paced back and forth in the living room. Alas, how am I supposed to go to class tomorrow? If I go to class tomorrow, won't I be laughed to death? The little fox raised her head and wrinkled her nose. She waved her fist and pretended to be fierce. Who dares to laugh at you? I'll help you beat him up. Li Yundong looked Su Chan up and down. She wasn't short, but she had a slim waist and slender limbs. She looked like a girl who couldn't even truss a chicken. Li Yundong looked at Su Chan. He laughed out loud. You. After all, Su Chan was a three-tailed demon fox, and her magic power was equivalent to the Shintong realm of cultivation. Although she was not as good as the masters of the major sects who hid in the mortal world to cultivate, compared to ordinary people, she was an incredibly powerful existence. Are you looking down on me? Su Chan said angrily when she heard the contempt in his tone. Li Yundong could see that the girl was getting a little angry, so he held back his laughter. Of course not. You just bought a cucumber and you scared a lot of people. Didn't you see that everyone in our class, from the teachers to the students, was scared silly by you? Why would anyone dare to mess with you? Su Chan snatched the cucumber from Li Yundong's hand and thrust it at him. You can talk after I stab you to death. Li Yundong burst into laughter. Li Yundong laughed heartily, then turned around and ran. Su Chan chased after him relentlessly. The two of them fought until Li Yundong was chased into the bedroom. He hid at the foot of the bed and waved his hands. Spare me, hero. Spare me, hero. I know I was wrong. Su Chan bit her lip and stabbed the cucumber at Li Yundong. Crack. The cucumber broke into 2 pieces. Li Yundong looked at Su Chan. Li Yundong was quick to react. He grabbed the broken part of the cucumber and stabbed it at Su Chan with a smile. Hee hee. Are you stupid? It's broken, right? I'll let you stab me again. Li Yundong poked her waist twice. That was where she was most ticklish. Su Chan giggled and fought back. Wow! How dare you fight back? I'm going to do justice on behalf of the heavens. Su Chan was naughty by nature, so she couldn't control herself when she started messing around with Li Yundong. When Li Yundong's cucumber hit the softest part of her chest, she let out a shriek and glared at Li Yundong. She didn't say a word. Li Yundong realized that he'd made a mistake. He smiled sheepishly. He didn't know what to say, so he just stared at Su Chan. Li Yundong felt a twinge of regret. I was being so frivolous. If I scared this beautiful girl away, I'd be in deep trouble. The little fox thought to herself, why do I feel a little happy playing around with this guy? And he doesn't look as disgusting as he did just now, does he? No, this guy took the Renyuan Jindan, so his yang qi is extremely strong. What if he gets attracted to my yin qi and tries to make love to me before he even reaches the foundation establishment stage? What should I do then? Then wouldn't my plan be ruined? No, I need to stay away from him from now on. I need to wait until he's strong enough. The smile on Su Chan's face gradually faded. She thought for a moment, then put down the cucumber in her hand. I don't have anywhere to go, she said. But you can't bully me like this. Her words aroused Li Yundong's compassion, and his eyes became soft and warm as he looked at Su Chan. He stood up, coughed dryly, and tried to find something to talk about. Are you hungry? Su Chan's stomach growled as soon as she finished speaking. Su Chan blushed and nodded. Of course I'm hungry. I've been watching over you for 3 days. How could I not be hungry? I didn't even have time to eat. I just wanted to buy you something to please you. I didn't expect you to be so ungrateful. I'm so pissed off. Li Yundong laughed. Hungry? That's fine. I'm hungry too. I'll make something to eat. Su Chan was surprised. You know how to cook? Li Yundong's parents had divorced when he was young. Although he was a lazy boy, he had to make ends meet to make a living. He rolled up his sleeves proudly. Humph. I'll show you what I can do. He walked out of the bedroom and into the kitchen. When he opened the fridge, he was stunned. The fridge was in a complete mess. Almost everything that could be eaten had been swept away. Even a bottle of fermented bean curd was no exception. Did I get a thief in my house? The thought flashed through Li Yundong's mind. The moment Li Yundong opened the fridge, Su Chan froze in place. She suddenly remembered that she had finished everything inside. Her cheeks flushed, and a sheepish look appeared on her face. She inched closer and closer to Li Yundong. Yes, I ate. She whimpered like a mosquito. Li Yundong took a deep breath and subconsciously wanted to say, Are you a hungry ghost reincarnated? There were 2 New Orleans roast chickens, 3 bottles of coconut milk, a bag of cake, 4 bags of bread, 3 boxes of jelly, half a watermelon, and a bottle of fermented bean curd. You ate them all? Didn't you stuff yourself to death? But when he saw the pitiful look on Su Chan's face, he held himself back and sighed. Even the cleverest housewife can't cook without rice, he said. There's no way I can cook without any ingredients at home, no matter how good I am at cooking. Come on, let's go get some groceries. Seeing that Li Yundong had no intention of pursuing the matter, Su Chan nodded and followed behind him. Li Yundong turned to look at her. Aren't you going to wait for me at home? He asked. Su Chan shook her head like a rattle drum. She clutched at the corner of Li Yundong's shirt as if she was afraid that Li Yundong would dump her. I'll go with you, she said pitifully. Li Yundong looked at her and said with a smile. Okay, but don't look like I've done something to you. Only then did Su Chan relax. She lifted her head and smiled sweetly. The 2 of them left the house. It only took them about 7 or 8 minutes to reach the food market. As soon as they entered the market, Li Yundong saw an auntie selling vegetables charging at him menacingly. You little vixen, slut. You owe me money and you still dare to come back with a pretty boy? Before she even got close, the auntie who sold vegetables started scolding her. Li Yundong frowned at the auntie's shrewish behavior. He stood in front of Su Chan without batting an eyelid. What's the matter? Can't you talk nicely? The auntie pointed a finger at Su Chan. She just bought my vegetables and ran away without paying me. This little slut is so young and yet she's already so naughty. What will you be able to do in the future? Li Yundong glared at the auntie. How much is it? I'll pay for it. The auntie noticed that Li Yundong's eyes were frighteningly bright. His gaze was like a sharp knife, piercing her heart. She didn't dare look him in the eye. She wanted to keep the peace and keep the peace. After all, doing business in peace was the only way to make money. But then she saw the pitiful look on Su Chan's face as she hid behind Li Yundong, and the men around her drooling at the sight of her. She couldn't help but feel angry again. The auntie suddenly remembered that when she was pregnant, her husband had cheated on her because of the seduction of a vixen. If it weren't for the fact that she was pregnant, she would have gotten a divorce immediately. It had been a long time, but the auntie still couldn't forget it. Her temper flared at the sight of beautiful women. The auntie rolled her eyes when she heard that Li Yundong was willing to pay. She opened her palm and demanded an exorbitant price. 100. Li Yundong laughed. 100 for a cucumber and a carrot? Is your cucumber inlaid with gold? Or is your carrot embedded with silver? The auntie's eyes widened. What? She was stealing just now. She should be fined 10 times. Li Yundong said angrily. 10 times for one? That's not 100, is it? You want 10 for a carrot and a cucumber? What kind of scam is this? Chapter 6. Her husband had cheated on her while she was pregnant, so she naturally transferred all her love for her husband to her son. She doted on him in every possible way. As a result, her son was arrogant and overbearing since he was a child. He couldn't study well, so he only knew how to fight and play with women. Li Yundong's anger grew, and the light in his eyes grew brighter and brighter. He was just about to hit Su Chan when someone pulled him from behind. Li Yundong turned around and saw Su Chan shaking her head at him. Forget it. Su Chan didn't want things to get out of hand. If she was forced to make a move, it would be too late to cry if she attracted the attention of her enemies. Li Yundong suppressed his anger and fished out a 100 yuan note from his pocket. Take the money, he said coldly. Otherwise, you won't be able to sleep well at night. Lu, the son of the vegetable stall owner, stared at Su Chan, his eyes filled with greed and amazement. When he heard Li Yundong's words, he immediately flared up. He took a step forward and glared at Li Yundong. What did you just say? Brat, are you tired of living? He took a step forward and grabbed Lu's knife-wielding hand with one hand. Exerting some force, he snatched the knife from Lu's hand. Then, he used his other hand to lift Lu off the ground, then tossed him onto the vegetable counter. Then, he stabbed the knife between Lu's legs. Lu's eyes widened in shock. Lu's eyes widened in shock. With a clanging sound, the rusty steel knife was plunged into the concrete platform by Li Yundong, more than 3 inches deep. With a fierce look on his face, Li Yundong said viciously, "Who's tired of living?" Lu was so shocked by Li Yundong's words that he was rendered speechless and tongue-tied. Li Yundong snorted and took Su Chan 3 meters away from him. Lu finally snapped out of his daze and checked himself from head to toe. When he realized that he wasn't hurt, he leaped off the counter in a fit of rage. Then, he reached for the knife that Li Yundong had plunged into the cement counter. However, the knife didn't budge an inch, as if it had been rooted to the ground. Lu was so angry that he didn't even think about it. He picked up another knife from the counter and prepared to pounce on Li Yundong. The owner of the vegetable stall saw it clearly. Seeing that his son had used a knife for 100 yuan, he felt a little regretful. He quickly stepped forward and hugged his son. Lu was hugged by his mother, so he rolled off the stage. However, he was still cursing and swearing. When Li Yundong and Su Chan left the market with their groceries, Lu suddenly remembered the knife that had been stabbed into the stage. Lu looked at the knife again and again. He pulled again and again, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't pull the knife out. Instead, he exerted too much force, and the knife broke with a loud clang. Lu cursed angrily and tossed the broken hilt far away. His eyes were fixed on the half-broken blade. His eyes flickered and his expression changed. The surrounding vegetable sellers and shoppers also gathered around to look at the steel knife that was stabbed into the stone slab. They clicked their tongues and sighed. "Oh my, how much force does it take to stab it in?" Lu yelled at the crowd. "What are you looking at? I can do it too." He stabbed the knife into the stone slab. There was a loud clang, but the knife only managed to leave a white mark on the stone slab. The knife couldn't withstand the force and broke in half. The crowd roared with laughter. Lu straightened his neck and yelled, "Laugh! Eat my knife if you laugh again." Only then did the crowd disperse. On the way back, Li Yundong was still fuming. "Damn it," he said. "I've never seen money before. How dare you blackmail me? How dare you threaten me? Do you think I'm a Hello Kitty just because I'm a tiger?" "What's a Hello Kitty?" Su Chan asked curiously. Li Yundong looked at her pretty face, and his anger dissipated. "It's just a cat. I'll buy one for you next time." Su Chan stuck her tongue out. What do I need a cat for? Besides, aren't cats everywhere? Why would I buy one? Li Yundong guffawed at Su Chan's adorable words. His earlier unhappiness vanished without a trace. Yes, yes. I'll pick up a Hello Kitty for you next time. Su Chan laughed when she saw that Li Yundong was no longer angry. It was my fault just now. I didn't pay for the things I bought. I'm so sorry. Li Yundong waved his hand nonchalantly. It's okay. Everyone forgets things sometimes. It's normal. Li Yundong thought to himself. Could it be that this girl doesn't have any money on her? I need to find a chance to put some money on her. It's not good to be poor these days. When he got home, Li Yundong bought half a kilo of meat, a carp, a kilo of tomatoes, a kilo of eggs, and a cabbage from the market. He paired them with the cucumbers Su Chan had bought for him to make 2 dishes and a soup. Fried cucumber with meat, tomato with eggs, and carp with cabbage soup. In the kitchen, Su Chan watched Li Yundong skillfully chop, stir-fry, weigh the wok, and add the seasonings. Her eyes shone with admiration. You're amazing. You know how to cook. It smells so good. Li Yundong's vanity was greatly satisfied. Really? Then it tastes even better. These are just some simple home-cooked dishes. I'll prepare something good next time and make a feast for you. Su Chan's eyes lit up. Really? Li Yundong smiled and scooped the food from the wok into a bowl. They're even more real than pearls. Su Chan watched as Li Yundong stir-fried one dish after another. The aroma of food wafted into her nostrils. She had been cultivating in the mountains since she was a child. Her days were spent eating raw meat and drinking blood. She had never seen food like this before. She was so hungry that she almost drooled. Li Yundong finally finished cooking and placed the dishes on the table. One of them sat on the couch in the living room, while the other sat cross-legged on the carpet. Su Chan picked up her chopsticks and looked at Li Yundong, suppressing her hunger. Can we eat now? Li Yundong nodded with a smile. Immediately, Su Chan began to sweep the table clean of food. She looked like a hungry ghost who hadn't eaten for 800 years. Li Yundong was still smiling at her at first, but after a while, his expression changed. Hey, you're too cruel. Leave some for me. Damn it. What am I supposed to eat if you eat it all? After saying this, the food on the table was reduced again. Li Yundong sucked in a breath of cold air. How could this girl not be polite to him at all? Li Yundong knew that if he continued to be a gentleman, he'd be left with nothing to eat tonight. So, he didn't hold back and started a fierce battle for food. The two of them fought back and forth for food. It only took 10 minutes for the pot of rice and the table of dishes to be wiped clean. When Little Fox finished the last piece of meat, she saw that there was nothing left to eat on the table. Her face was filled with disappointment. Unsatisfied, she saw that there was still some soup on the plate, so she picked up the plate and licked it clean. When she was done, she glanced around and saw Li Yundong looking at her with a half-smile on his face. Su Chan blushed and put down the plate in embarrassment. Su Chan blushed and put down the plate sheepishly. She wiped the grease off the corner of her mouth with the back of her hand. It's so delicious. Li Yundong was pleased with himself. Even though he wasn't full, he felt a warm feeling in his heart. He laughed. Yummy. I'll cook for you every day from now on. Every day? Su Chan's eyes sparkled. She stared at Li Yundong with a mixture of surprise and gratitude. Is that weird? Are you going to cook for me if I don't? Li Yundong noticed that the corners of Su Chan's mouth were covered in grease. He pulled out a napkin and gently wiped the corner of her mouth with it. His movements were gentle and gentle. Su Chan stared at Li Yundong in a daze. Why are you so nice to me? She asked. Li Yundong smiled and thought to himself, why do you keep following me? Do you know that you are the first girl who has taken the initiative to like me since I was young? Has no one been nice to you before? Li Yundong asked. Su Chan was silent for a moment. Then, she shook her head slowly, a desolate look on her face. Li Yundong smiled. No one has been nice to me since I was a kid, and no one has taken care of me. That's why I've been looking for someone who can be nice to me, and I can be nice to her too. Su Chan looked up at Li Yundong. Aren't you going to ask me where I come from? Aren't you going to ask me who I am? Li Yundong thought for a moment. You'll tell me when you want to, he said. Surprise and gratitude shone in Su-chan's eyes. She lowered her head and stood up. I'm going to bed. Where should I sleep? Li Yundong pointed at the bedroom. You can sleep on my bed. I'll sleep outside. It was broad daylight, but the two of them were in their own rooms. One was lying on the bed, deep in thought, while the other had her head pillowed on her arm, her eyes staring up at the sky. Li Yundong had no idea what was going to happen to him now that a beautiful girl had moved into his house. Li Yundong muttered to himself. It wasn't that he didn't want to know Su-chan's background and identity, but he was more afraid that the little beauty would run away if he forced her to. This was the first time in his life that such a beautiful woman had been so intimate with him. She was so beautiful that she was like a colorful dream, and he was afraid that he would wake up from it. If this is really a beautiful dream, then I'll just keep dreaming and never wake up. Li Yundong closed his eyes, a smile playing at the corner of his lips. Who in the world would have a romantic moment when the apricot blossoms were blowing all over their heads? Which boy in this world wouldn't have a crush on love? Su-chan lay on the bed, hugging a pillow to her chest. Her body was almost curled up into a ball. Master, she murmured, the outside world is scary, but not all of them are bad people. This guy treats me pretty well, but I have no choice but to take his yang. Who told him to swallow my Renyuan Jindan? But why do I feel so guilty and sad every time I think about it? Su-chan rolled around on the bed in frustration. She covered her ears with a pillow and tried to hypnotize herself like an ostrich. He stole my Renyuan Jindan. He stole my Renyuan Jindan, she said. After repeating the same thing dozens of times, Su-chan slowly felt at ease. She should have squeezed the guy who stole her Renyuan Jindan dry. Chapter 7. Li Yundong didn't know whether to laugh or cry. My dear little lady, it took me a lot of effort to muster up the courage to go to class, but you're still following me? You're going to be a laughingstock if someone sees you. Let go of me. Let go of me. I won't even have the courage to go to class today if you keep messing around. Su-chan pouted. I'll teach anyone who dares to laugh at you a lesson. Li Yundong patted Su-chan's head. Be a good girl and wait for me at home. I'll bring you something to eat after class. Ha! Your braids aren't messed up at all when you're sleeping. Su-chan tilted her head and dodged Li Yundong's hand. Then, she clutched the corner of Li Yundong's shirt tightly. No. I want to go with you. Even Su-chan didn't know why she had to stick by Li Yundong's side. Maybe it was because the only person she was familiar with in this strange secular world was this guy who had swallowed her Renyuan Jindan. The insecure Su-chan refused to let go. No matter how Li Yundong tried to persuade her, she would just shake her head. Li Yundong had no choice but to let out a long sigh. He shouted like a gangster, well, who cares what other people think of me? Pick up your own girl. Ahem, walk your own path. Leave other people without a girl. Ahem, leave other people without a path. All right, let's go to the execution ground. On the way to the school, Li Yundong saw many pairs of students walking towards the school from the rented houses outside. The women were like little birds, and the men were like beauties. Of course, there were also the occasional boys who were like little birds. Li Yundong wanted Su-chan to hold his arm and his waist, but he was afraid that his perverted nature would scare the girl away. Along the way, Li Yundong kept looking back at Su-chan, only to see her following closely behind him. Her hand was still gently tugging at the corner of Li Yundong's shirt like a child who hadn't grown up yet. Li Yundong couldn't help but laugh at her reaction. Li Yundong and Su-chan immediately attracted a lot of attention as soon as they stepped through the school gates. The boys stared at Su-chan, their eyes filled with amazement. Occasionally, they would glance at the ordinary-looking Li Yundong, their faces filled with jealousy. Without exception, all of them cursed in their hearts. Why is a beauty like her following a guy like him? How is this guy better than me? Despicable, shameless, despicable. The girls' gazes flashed across the little fox's body as they cursed in their hearts. Little fox. Coquettish fox. You look so coquettish yet you still dare to come out and show off. But most of their eyes fell on Li Yundong, and their hearts were filled with curiosity. What was so good about this man that he could attract such a beauty to accompany him? In the past, there was a saying that a man's strength could be measured by his opponents. A man's taste could be measured by his friends. But in reality, these girls were more willing to believe that a man's strength and taste could be measured by the women around him. A man with a certain level of strength would have a certain level of woman by his side. But where exactly was this guy's strength? In the past, she had only heard that this guy was the king of confessions in the university. In a year, he had been given 21 nice guy cards, which was an unprecedented record in the history of Tiannan University. If he really had the ability, how could he have been given 21 good guy cards? The girls couldn't figure it out no matter how hard they thought about it, but they were reserved enough not to approach Li Yundong and ask him about it. Of course, the main reason was that Su Chan was with Li Yundong. Little Fox was still wearing an antique red dress. She looked like a beauty who had just stepped out of a movie or television drama. However, the dress she was wearing looked very fitting to others. It was as if this was how she should be wearing it. It was classical and beautiful. After walking around the campus for a while, Li Yundong finally ran into something he didn't want to see. "Ha! Isn't that the Cucumber Emperor from yesterday?" Some of the students who had been in the same class as Li Yundong the day before burst into laughter. Even though Li Yundong's skin was as thick as a city wall, he couldn't help but feel a burning sensation in his chest. He stiffened his neck and refused to look at them. Deep down he thought, "A question, humph, you guys sure want to, but do you think you're that lucky?" Some of the students around them didn't understand what they were talking about, so they asked around curiously. The students, who usually had nothing better to do, took the trouble to explain. "Oh, so he's the Cucumber Emperor who got the most hits on the school forum yesterday?" Li Yundong thought to himself. How the hell did he end up on the school forum again? Li Yundong was going crazy. "Hey Li Yundong! Are cucumbers delicious? Can you control your heat or not?" A boy yelled. Everyone around him burst into laughter. The most ridiculous thing was that the girls were laughing even louder than the boys. "Haha! Cucumbers can control heat too? That's amazing! I'm dying of laughter. Cucumbers can control heat too. Next time I get hot, I'll just eat a few cucumbers and I'll be fine." Li Yundong's eyes twitched as he listened to the laughter. "Damn it! Calm down. You have to calm down. They're jealous of me." Absolutely. It wouldn't have been a big deal if they were just laughing, but the problem was that these bored animals were following Li Yundong and Su Chan like they were just bystanders. When they reached the bottom of the school building, Li Yundong realized that there were 3 layers of people surrounding them. Li Yundong was furious. Fuck. Are these guys done? But he couldn't do anything to them. All he could do was grit his teeth and endure it. Su Chan saw Li Yundong's reaction, and she remembered what her Shifu had told her. If you want a man to remember you and be grateful to you forever, stand up for him when he needs help the most. Stand up for him and shield him from the wind and rain. And so, Su Chan flipped out. Su Chan put her hands on her hips and rushed up to the boy who was laughing the loudest. Then, she looked him up and down. The boy wasn't tall, but he was quite handsome. His peach blossom eyes were very attractive to women. When he saw Su Chan charging at him, he thought he was in for a romantic encounter. He quickly put on a satisfied smile. But after Su Chan was done looking him up and down, she grabbed his wrist and started feeling his pulse. After a while she pinched his cheek and shouted, "Open your mouth." The boy was baffled and subconsciously opened his mouth. The little fox sized him up and sneered, "Your complexion is pale, your tongue is red, your pulse is weak, your eye sockets are deep and dark, your eyes are lifeless, your lips are thin, and although your hair is shiny, your eyebrows are sparse at such a young age. Do you know the reason for this?" The boy was confused by Su Chan's words. What reason?" he stammered. "It means that you have a severe deficiency of yin in your kidneys," Su Chan said loudly. The boy vaguely felt that this did not seem to be a good thing, and his face turned red. "What kidney yin deficiency? What do you mean? What the hell are you talking about?" Su Chan made a trumpet with her hands and put it to her mouth. "It means that you have a deficiency of kidney. Do you understand?" Wow! Su Chan's words were so fierce that it caused an uproar. All kinds of eyes shifted from Li Yundong to the man with kidney deficiency, making his face turn purple and red. The boy felt like blood was rushing to his head. His head felt dizzy, and he almost fainted. "You're slandering me," he stammered hoarsely. "Why, you're the one with a deficiency of kidney. I'm so young and strong. How could I have a deficiency of kidney?" Su Chan sneered. Young and strong? Haven't you heard of heroes drowning in rivers and heroes falling off horses? You're taking advantage of your youth to indulge in lust. Did you have sex with a woman last night? And you're asking for it too much? Sex. Asking for it too much. Every word was fiercer than the one before it. Everyone was shocked, and they looked at the man with kidney deficiency with more amazement in their eyes. The boy had indeed had sex with his girlfriend last night. Now that Xueqi had hit the nail on the head, his heart wrenched, and he couldn't breathe. His eyes rolled back, and he fainted. Whoa! Something's wrong. Something's wrong. The crowd was in an uproar. They wanted to gather around to see what was going on, but Xueqi put her hands on her hips and shouted, "Stop right there." Everyone stopped dead in their tracks. Xueqi crouched down and pinched the boy's philtrum. After a while, the boy slowly regained consciousness. Xueqi rose to her feet and swept her gaze across the crowd. Her eyes landed on a tall boy in a long-sleeved shirt and long pants. She hurried over to him. The boy's heart raced when he saw Xueqi walking toward him. It wasn't because he was looking forward to a romantic encounter, but because he was afraid. He was afraid that this little beauty would give him a kidney deficiency like she had just done. Xueqi stopped in front of the boy and said, "Give me your hands." The boy quickly hid both his hands behind his back. "No," he said, his face filled with fear. "Then open your mouth," Xueqi said. The boy hurriedly clamped his mouth shut. He shook his head like a rattle, as if he wanted to sew his mouth shut with a needle and thread. Xueqi sneered. "Do you really think I can't do anything to you just because of this?" She stretched out her hand, grabbed the boy's shoulder, and pulled him around so that his back was facing her. Xueqi pressed her thumb on the boy's Mingmen acupoint, just under the spine of the second lumbar vertebrae. "Does it hurt?" she asked loudly. "I wouldn't dare tell you even if it hurt, not to mention that it doesn't hurt. Most importantly, I don't even know if it's supposed to hurt or not." That was why he had made up his mind to keep his mouth shut. He looked like he was ready to die a martyr. But Xueqi's words made him open his mouth. "You're not going to say anything, are you? Then don't blame me for making it up for you." The boy gasped. "It hurts. It hurts." Xueqi thought. "Do you take me for a fool? I'm pressing on your shenshu acupoint and you say it hurts?" Xueqi raged. "Tell me the truth. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt." The boy said again. "Does it hurt or not?" Xueqi said angrily. The boy looked aggrieved. "It didn't hurt earlier, but it hurts now." Xueqi snorted and loosened her grip a little. "How about now?" The boy had resigned himself to his fate. "It doesn't hurt. It's just sore," he said honestly. Xueqi pressed a few other acupoints on his body and asked him how he felt. "Have you been having trouble sleeping lately? Dizziness, tinnitus, low back pain, chills in your limbs, and other symptoms?" she asked. The boy's mouth fell open. How did you know?" He shuddered and looked at Xueqi pleadingly. I don't have a deficiency of yin in my kidneys, do I?" Xueqi snorted. "Of course not. You have a deficiency of yang in your kidneys. You could say it's kidney deficiency." "So it's still kidney deficiency." The crowd sighed. The yang deficiency man shouted, "I don't have a girlfriend. I'm still a virgin. How could it be? Kidney deficiency?" Xueqi sneered. "Who said you have to have too much intercourse to have a deficiency of yang in your kidneys? You must be staying up all night, flipping day and night, causing a deficiency of yang qi in your body. Look at you. Look at you, big and burly, and your face is as pale as a woman's." Yang Void Man almost collapsed from Little Fox's scolding. The people around him once again felt like they were going to explode with atomic and hydrogen bombs. Especially when they saw that this burly man was like a sheep in front of the delicate and gentle little fox. They were all aghast. Xueqi put her hands on her hips and pointed at the yang deficiency man. "From now on, you should sleep according to your normal schedule. You can take the golden kidney pill every day." Then she pointed at the yang deficiency man, who was lying on the ground with his eyes staring up at the sky. "You don't have any intercourse in the future. You can follow the records in herbal rebirth. Nourish yourself with sheep lung and winter melon soup. Take your time and you'll recover naturally." Then she raised her head and looked at the soy sauce gang members. "Now, Does anyone still doubt that cucumbers are cool and sweet and can reduce internal heat? Step forward if you don't believe me. The crowd retreated in awe. Who would dare to say no? If this lady came up and said that she had kidney deficiency, then how could he survive in this school in the future? Su-chan put her hands on her hips. Seeing that no one dared to say anything, she snorted and said loudly, "Don't talk nonsense if you don't know anything. It's recorded in Herbal Rebirth for daily use. Cucumbers can expel heat in the chest, quench thirst, and improve water circulation. It's recorded in Herbal Rebirth for Lu Chuan. It can treat fever, body heat, thirst, and burns. It's recorded in Herbal Rebirth for Southern Yunnan. It can relieve spasms, feverish toxins, and clear thirst. It's recorded in Herbal Rebirth for Truth. It has a sweet smell, and can reduce internal heat and water circulation. All the medical books say that cucumbers are cool and sweet, and can relieve internal heat and reduce internal heat. You ignorant people like to treat your ignorance as entertainment. I'm ashamed of you." Su-chan scolded them loudly, leaving the students red in the face and speechless. Some of them noticed that Su-chan looked young and pretty. She looked like she was 15 or 16 years old at most. How could she know these things? Noticing the suspicion in everyone's eyes, Su-chan ran up to Li Yundong and grabbed his arm. "Yundong," she said, giggling. "What do you think? Am I right?" Li Yundong was so stunned that he couldn't come back to his senses. When Su-chan shook his arm and winked at him, he finally snapped out of it. You're right. Yes, you're right. Yes, you're right." Su-chan's smile was as beautiful as a flower. She looked like a little bird, completely different from her earlier scolding and putting her hands on her hips. She giggled. "It's all thanks to your teaching." The crowd was in an uproar. Everyone turned to look at Li Yundong suspiciously. Li Yundong knows traditional Chinese medicine? Doesn't seem like it. Maybe he's hiding his true strength? That's possible. Why else would a charming little beauty like her be with him? That's possible. Although the crowd was skeptical, they didn't go looking for trouble. Otherwise, the little fox would say that she was suffering from kidney deficiency. Wouldn't that be the same as looking for a toilet with a lantern? That would be like looking for death. What kind of man would be able to take that? Even women wouldn't be able to take it, let alone men. Su-chan saw that the crowd was still watching and whispering to each other. She straightened up from Li Yundong's arms and put her hands on her hips. "What are you all still standing here for? If you're not convinced, come on up. If you're not convinced, then hurry up and leave. Or do you want me to show you some more?" The crowd immediately scattered like birds and beasts. Only the Yang and Yin hypocrisy men were left, surrounded by a group of their friends. The Inshu man was stunned for a long time. Suddenly, he jumped up and shouted hysterically, "I don't want to live anymore. I want to go to Foxconn." After shouting for a while, he couldn't help but turn around and yell angrily, "Hey, why didn't you guys stop me?" The crowd burst into laughter. "Why would we stop you? If you want to die, then go ahead." The Inshu man roared, "Even if I die, I'll drag you guys down with me." As soon as he finished speaking, someone pointed at the Yang and Inshu men and said, "One of you has Yang deficiency, while the other has Yin deficiency. If the two of you are like fish and water, you'll be able to complement each other and never lack each other. Isn't that a wonderful thing? It'll be a legend in Tiannan University." Chapter 8. Su-chan blinked. "Yeah, we all know," she said, blinking. "Yeah, we all know," Su-chan said. Li Yundong thought that the little fox was referring to the people in the mountains, but who would have thought that the little fox was referring to people who cultivated in the Tao? Little Fox's heart skipped a beat. She thought to herself, "Why don't I take this opportunity to guide him in his cultivation?" She then said, 10 Daos and 9 physicians. Not only is Sun Simiao an enlightened immortal, but he's also a national physician himself. Since ancient times, be it Peng Zhu, Guxian, Xueqi, or Gu Hong, they've all been enlightened immortals as well as medical experts. Li Yundong smiled. "I know that Sun Simiao is a master physician. He wrote the 1,000 gold prescriptions, right? But he's a Taoist deity? Who did you hear that from?" Su-chan said, "My master." Li Yundong burst into laughter. "Your master is a superstitious person, huh? Su Chan pouted. Don't you dare badmouth my master. Li Yundong raised his hands and held back his laughter. Fine. Fine. I won't say anything. Su Chan's anger subsided as quickly as it had come. She stared at him nervously with her big round eyes. Do you want to learn? She asked. Do you want to learn? Do you want me to teach you? Li Yundong smiled and waved his hand. Medicine? Forget it. I can't carry all that stuff. Su Chan mustered up her courage and said, learn Taoism. Li Yundong stopped laughing and looked at Su Chan with a strange look in his eyes. Like you? Let me go, please. I'm living a good life. Why would I want to learn Taoism? I don't want to become a Taoist. Li Yundong thought. I want to push you down. Why the hell would I push you down if I became a Taoist? Su Chan thought, you idiot. Learning Taoism isn't about becoming a Taoist. It's about the Taoist path of cultivation. But Su Chan knew that she couldn't say that out loud. It would raise Li Yundong's suspicions. Soon, the teacher walked into the classroom. He tapped the desk with his pointer and the class began. Li Yundong sat in the back row and listened to their conversation. Su Chan, on the other hand, couldn't help but stare at Li Yundong from the side. She sighed inwardly. This guy really doesn't know how lucky he is. If we cultivators swallowed the Renyuan Jindan, we would definitely find a secluded corner and meditate in seclusion for 3 to 7 years. That way we could use all the power of the Jindan for ourselves. But this guy, he just let the Jindan transform his physique and didn't care about it. He just let his abundant qi and blood be wasted every day. But he didn't know how to use the cultivation technique to transform his qi and blood into Yuanyang Zhen qi. If he's willing to cultivate with me, I'm afraid he'll be able to build his foundation in 1 year, attain divine powers in 2 years, and attain an indestructible golden body in 3 years. The little fox sighed dejectedly in her heart. Bastard! Why did I let this ungrateful fellow take advantage of me? Damn it! Throwing pearls into the dark. After lamenting in her heart for a while, little fox thought to herself, this won't do. Every day that he refuses to learn is another day that he's wasting his blood essence and primordial yang energy. If I wait for the medicine's effect to slowly fade, even if he reaches the foundation establishment stage in the future, the effect will be greatly reduced by then. What should I do? The little fox's heart skipped a beat. Yundong, how about I give you a massage? She said in a sweet voice. Li Yundong felt as if his bones had gone limp at the sound of her voice. He looked at Su Chan with a strange expression and pointed at the teacher on the podium. I'm in the middle of a class. That's not a good idea, is it? Su Chan didn't wait for his consent. She rose to her feet and walked to the back of the podium to give Li Yundong a massage. As soon as Su Chan pressed the Bai Hui acupoint on the top of Li Yundong's head with her fair, slender hands, Li Yundong felt a surge of heat rush up his lower abdomen and rush to the top of his head. Then, as if he had been enlightened, the heat quickly spread to his limbs. It was so comfortable that he felt as if he was soaking in hot water. He closed his eyes, not wanting to open them again. Out of all the acupoints on the human body, the Bai Hui acupoint was the one that could raise yang qi the most. Many people who were good at acupuncture would stick a needle into a patient's Bai Hui acupoint when they were on the verge of death. The purpose of the needle was to adjust the yang qi and save the patient's life. In the movie The Sound of the Wind, the traitor Lord Lu faced Old Ghost, who was on the verge of death after being tortured by his acupuncture. The last needle he stuck was the Bai Hui acupoint on the top of Old Ghost's head. That needle pulled the yuan qi out of Old Ghost's body, and the man came back to life. Su Chan used her fingers to massage the Bai Hui acupoint on the top of Li Yundong's head. Then, she spread her hands apart and pressed her thumbs on the Bai Hui acupoint. She moved her middle fingers to the Shenting acupoint on Li Yundong's forehead, and her little fingers to the temples. The Shenting acupoint was an important acupoint on the forehead. When the Du Meridian's qi traveled up to the head, it would have to pass through this acupoint. The Shenting acupoint was located on a person's forehead, and its position was very hard. Therefore, it needed to be massaged with a strong middle finger. As for the softness of the temples, it needed to be gently massaged with the weakest little finger. This posture made Su Chan's hands look like 2 three-pronged forks. In the cultivation world, it was known as the 3-pronged flowers. In the art of cultivation, there was a saying about the 3 flowers at the crown. The 3 flowers were also known as the 3 flowers, and the 3 flowers at the crown. Since ancient times, most of the explanations for the 3 flowers in cultivation books were incomparably mysterious and difficult to understand. In fact, the simplest explanation was essence, qi, and blood. Su Chan's 3-pronged forks probed a person's most essential yuan-yang, which was also known as the 3 flowers, essence, qi, and blood. The yuan-yang in Li Yundong's body was mobilized by the little fox, starting from the lower dantian, passing through the perineum, passing through the anus, along the due meridian of the spine, passing through the tailbone, jiaji, and yuzhen passes. Then, it reached the bai hui acupoint on the top of the head. Then, it went down from the ears to the cheeks, to the yingxiang acupoint, to the magpie's bridge, and finally to the ren meridian. This was equivalent to the shao zhou tian in cultivation, but Li Yundong was cultivating passively in a muddled manner. Although the effect of passive cultivation was different from active cultivation, there was no difference in the comfort of the hot qi rolling in the meridians of his body. Why were so many cultivators able to abstain from sex? It was because when they entered the minor zhou tian or the major zhou tian, their yuan-yang zhenqi would flow through their meridians, especially when it reached the huiyin acupoint. It was an incredibly stimulating experience. This kind of stimulation was no less than that of a man and a woman having sex. In fact, it was sometimes even more intense. This was the first time Li Yundong had felt something like this. He felt an indescribable pleasure rippling through his body. At first, it was like a trickling stream, but it soon turned into a boiling, majestic ocean. Then, the feeling became like a vast ocean, drowning him. His entire body felt like it was floating on a warm ocean. There was not a single part of him that wasn't comfortable. There was not a single part of him that wasn't happy. Even the fine hairs on his body were dripping with pleasure. Li Yundong felt a surge of pleasure brewing in his chest. He wanted nothing more than to shout and scream in order to vent it. When the surrounding students saw this scene, they all widened their eyes and looked at Li Yundong enviously, gritting their teeth. I've seen people put on airs, but I've never seen anyone put on airs like this. How dare he ask a pretty girl to give him a massage in class? F***CK. Is there still any justice in this world? The look of enjoyment on his face was enough to make people want to stomp on it. The professor teaching Marxist-Leninist philosophy on the podium had also seen what was going on. His face was as black as the bottom of a pot, especially since he had just heard from the professor who taught China's ancient literature and history the day before that there was a student in class 2 of the Chinese language department who was playing around with a pretty girl in class. Today, the professor thought that the guy was really arrogant. How dare he ask the pretty girl next to him to give him a massage in class? Does he think this is some kind of entertainment venue? Does he think he's the landlord here? I've seen arrogant people, but I've never seen someone this arrogant. Marxist-Leninist philosophy nearly crushed the chalk in his hand. He gritted his teeth and walked off the podium. Just as he was about to reach Li Yundong, Su Chan, who was massaging Li Yundong, turned to look at him. Su Chan smiled at Marxist-Leninist and made a shushing gesture with her hand. Then, she winked at Marxist-Leninist philosophy. Marxist-Leninist froze. The professor's surname was Liu, and he was only in his mid-20s. He had stayed on as a lecturer after completing his master's, so he was at the prime of his youth. When he saw Su Chan smile at him like that, his brain froze. He stood rooted to the spot, not knowing what to do. He wanted to interrupt the two of them, but he didn't have the heart to go against the pretty girl's wishes. Who asked her to be so beautiful? Any man would listen to her. But if he didn't interrupt them, all the students in the classroom would be staring at him. How was he supposed to teach in the future? Marxist-Leninist philosophy Liu was at a loss. He stood rooted to the spot, his face dark and pained. The students in the classroom looked at Li Yundong, who had closed his eyes and was enjoying the massage. They were both shocked and amused, but none of them dared to laugh. When Su Chan finally withdrew her fingers from Li Yundong's body, she patted the top of Li Yundong's head with her palm, pushing the last bit of yuan-yang back into his meridians. Li Yundong shuddered and let out a long sigh. That felt good. That felt so good. Normally, Li Yundong's voice wouldn't have caught anyone's attention. But right now, the classroom was dead silent. Li Yundong had just completed his Shao Zhoutian, so his body was full of qi. His voice was loud and clear, and everyone in the classroom heard it loud and clear. After Li Yundong sighed with emotion, he didn't notice the strangeness around him. When he opened his eyes, he was so scared that he almost fell off his seat. Li Yundong's eyes widened. What are you doing, Mr. Liu? He stammered. Wah! The students in the classroom couldn't hold it in any longer. They pounded their chests and stomped their feet in hysterical laughter. Marxist-Leninist philosophy Liu's face contorted into a grimace. When the laughter died down, he gritted his teeth and said, "Have you had enough?" This sentence made some of the students around him burst into laughter. Li Yundong forced a smile that looked worse than a crying face. "Yes, that's enough." Marxist-Leninist philosophy Liu pointed at the door. "Then get the hell out of here. I don't welcome students like you here." Li Yundong was tongue-tied, unable to speak for a moment. Su Chan, who was standing beside him, stepped forward to speak, but Li Yundong pulled her back. All right, I'll leave now." When Li Yundong ran out of the classroom with his head in his hands, Su Chan said angrily, "Why are you afraid of him? I'll teach him a lesson for you." Tears streamed down Li Yundong's face. "It's over. It'll be hard for me not to be famous now." Su Chan rolled up her sleeves and tugged at Li Yundong. "Let's go. I'll teach him a lesson for you." Li Yundong pulled her back and glared at her. He was just about to explode when he remembered how gentle Su Chan had been when she was massaging him earlier. She was doing this for his own good, wasn't she? Li Yundong's anger dissipated instantly. He couldn't blame her for this. He had to blame himself. Chapter 9. Li Yundong stared at Su Chan with a broken look on his face. "School? Teacher? You're so out of date, big sis. Did you just transmigrate from ancient times?" Su Chan blinked her eyes. "What do you mean?" Li Yundong was tongue-tied, unable to speak for a long time. After a while, he sighed dejectedly and said, "Forget it, you don't understand. If I get expelled from school, I won't be able to get my parents' alimony." "Did I do something wrong just now?" Su Chan asked weakly. "Did I cause you trouble?" Li Yundong shook his head. "No. You didn't do anything wrong. I'm the one who's at fault." Li Yundong took a deep breath, then let out a long exhale. It was as if he had exhaled all the frustrations in his chest. He was a naturally optimistic person, so he quickly adjusted his mood and smiled at Su Chan. "Let me show you around my school," he said. It was past 10, and Li Yundong didn't want to go back to school right now. So, he took Su Chan for a walk on the tree-lined path around the school. Even though he couldn't hold hands with Su Chan, he could still feel the sun shining on his shoulders. Su Chan was right next to him. He could smell the faint fragrance of a virgin and the fresh scent of green leaves. Wasn't this a kind of tranquil beauty that made his heart race? Along the way, Li Yundong and Su Chan ran into quite a few students. Every time they saw them, they would turn to look at Su Chan, amazed by her pure charm. Their gazes made Li Yundong feel good. "Your school," Su Chan said, looking around curiously. "Oh, it's a school. It's huge." Li Yundong smiled. "It's just an unranked university. If it were a national key university, the campus would be even bigger." "Really?" Su Chan said enviously. "I'd love to visit it someday." Li Yundong smiled. "You seem to like crowds." Su Chan thought for a moment and said faintly, "Maybe. Maybe I stayed in the mountains for too long. Sometimes I didn't see a single person for years." Li Yundong opened his mouth to speak, but a voice came from the woods. "Xueqi, I really like you. I'll do anything for you." Li Yundong's heart skipped a beat. In the past, it was always me confessing to others, and they even took a video and posted it on the internet to embarrass themselves. Today, the tables have turned. Li Yundong was overjoyed. He put his index finger to his lips and said, "Sure. Let's go take a look." Su Chan was a playful girl by nature. Seeing Li Yundong's expression, she couldn't help but giggle. She put a finger to her lips and shushed him. The two of them looked at each other and smiled. The two of them squatted next to the bushes, trying to eavesdrop on the conversation. The young man was standing in the pavilion not far away from them, so they squatted next to the bushes and listened intently to the man's words. "Zhao Yujian, we really aren't meant for each other." Zhou Qin's voice was melodious, but there was a coldness that came from deep within her bones. But, Xueqi, please give me a chance. Which part of me doesn't deserve you? I'll work hard to improve myself, Zhao Yujin begged. Hey, why are you so annoying? Which part of you is worthy of our Xueqi? Li Yundong raised an eyebrow as soon as he heard the voice. Ding Nan? Li Yundong poked his head out of the bushes and peered into the pavilion. Xueqi stood with her back to him. She was wearing a light green, lacy, mid-sleeved shirt. Her long black hair cascaded over her shoulders like a waterfall, and she wore a light brown lacy dress. She stood in the antique pavilion with overhanging eaves and arches. The forest wind blew over and fluttered the hem of her skirt. At this moment, she really had the elegance and beauty of Xueqi. Her temperament was outstanding. Xueqi had met Xueqi before, but at the time, all her attention had been on Li Yundong, so she hadn't paid much attention to Xueqi. Now that she did, she couldn't help but exclaim, "She's so beautiful." Ding Nan, who stood next to Xueqi, was facing Li Yundong from the side. She was wearing a white sleeveless sweatshirt with a cute Hello Kitty logo on the chest. She was wearing a pair of denim shorts, which not only showed off her long slender legs, but also outlined the curve of her perfectly round butt. Even though Li Yundong disliked Ding Nan, he had to admit that this woman was youthful and sexy. No wonder she was the prettiest girl in the foreign languages department. Ding Nan's clothes were cute, but the words she said weren't cute at all. They were mean and vicious. There was Li Yundong, a toad lusting after a swan, and now you popped out of nowhere. You guys are so annoying, aren't you? Don't you ever look at yourself in the mirror? Why are you all so full of yourselves? Ding Nan's words made Li Yundong frown. Xueqi stuck out her tongue and whispered, "What a mean woman. She's even scolding you." Li Yundong smiled at her, signaling for her to continue listening. Li Yundong's gaze moved from Xueqi and Ding Nan to Zhao Yujin, who was standing in the pavilion. The boy was about 183 meters tall, with a strong physique and a handsome face. He bore a striking resemblance to Takuya Kimura. Li Yundong recognized him. He was the president of the Taekwondo club on campus. He had also won the championship of a municipal Taekwondo university student exchange tournament. Zhao Yujin was recognized as the most handsome man in the school. More than 30 girls had written him love letters. I didn't expect Xueqi to reject Zhao Yujin. Li Yundong was surprised. Xueqi was a mysterious girl. He had heard that she came from a powerful family. Most importantly, she excelled in both academic and moral conduct. Her appearance, figure, and temperament were all top-notch. Other than the fact that she was insufferably cold, he couldn't find a single flaw in her. What kind of man would a woman like her find in the future? Even Zhao Yujin had turned her down. Zhao Yujin hadn't expected to be scolded so badly by Ding Nan. His whole body was shaking, and his lips were trembling. He pointed a finger at Ding Nan and stammered, "Why you?" Ding Nan snorted coldly. You? What about you? If I were you, I'd find a place to hide. Don't embarrass yourself here." Xueqi patted Ding Nan's hand and said softly, "Nan, forget it. Don't talk about it." "Zhao Yujin," Xueqi said, turning to Zhao Yujin. "Don't come looking for me again. It's really impossible between us." Zhao Yujin's face was ashen. He stood in the pavilion like a statue, staring blankly at Xueqi and Ding Nan as they left together. Zhao Yujin stared at Xueqi's back. "Xueqi, you'll regret this," he shouted. Xueqi didn't even look back. She didn't even stop walking. It was as if she hadn't heard what Zhao Yujin had just said. Ding Nan, on the other hand, looked back at him and sneered. Then, she gave him the middle finger. Zhao Yujin's handsome face contorted into a grimace. He took a step forward, then stopped dead in his tracks. He paced back and forth in the pavilion like a raging lion. After a long while he left, glaring at Xueqi with a menacing look in his eyes. After Zhao Yujin left, Li Yundong and Xueqi emerged from the grove of trees. Li Yundong sighed inwardly. "I didn't realize it when it happened to me, but now that I've seen someone else confess to me and get rejected, I realize how miserable it is. I really admire myself for losing every battle I've ever fought before." Li Yundong was no longer in the mood to take Xueqi shopping after witnessing such a tragedy. He thought for a moment then said, "Come on, let's go back. I'll cook you some delicious food." Su Chan's face lit up when she heard that. She was almost drooling. She nodded like a chicken pecking at rice. Li Yundong laughed. Let's go get some groceries first. He turned to Su Chan. Will you buy them for me? Su Chan frowned. But I don't want to cause you trouble again. Li Yundong smiled and waved his hand. He took out at least a dozen red notes from his pocket and stuffed them into Su Chan's hand without saying a word. Su Chan had no idea that Li Yundong was just trying to give her some money so she could use it for self-defense. Otherwise, why would she need so much money to buy groceries? Manchu Han Imperial Feast? Su Chan looked at the money in her hand and blinked blankly. She had no idea how many things she could buy with the money in her hand. She just looked at Li Yundong and said, "Oh." Then she clasped the money tightly in her palm. The two of them walked out of the school gate and arrived at the market near the campus. Li Yundong led Su Chan to a butcher's shop. "Tell her to buy half a kilo of streaky pork and a tube bone," he said. Su Chan did as Li Yundong told her. The butcher looked at Su Chan in awe, then picked out a few pieces of the best streaky pork and tube bone for her. Su Chan took the plastic bag and was about to turn around to leave when Li Yundong grabbed her arm. Hey, pay up." Su Chan stuck out her tongue and made a face at the butcher. "Oh, I forgot," she said sheepishly. Then, she handed over all the money she'd been saving to Li Yundong. The butcher was shocked. "I don't need this much money." Li Yundong didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He took one note from Su Chan's hand and handed it to the butcher. Then he took the change. Li Yundong shoved the change into Su Chan's other hand. "You don't need this much money to buy groceries," he said. "One note will buy you a lot of groceries. Of course, if you want to eat at a restaurant, that's a different story. One note won't be enough." Su Chan blinked. "Is the food in the restaurant good? How does it compare to yours?" Li Yundong laughed. "Hard to say. Each has its own merits, I guess. I have a few of my specialties that I haven't made yet." He smiled and chatted with the little fox as he walked toward the vegetable stall. After a few steps, Li Yundong noticed that the owner of the vegetable stall who had blackmailed him earlier was staring at him. Li Yundong wasn't a forgiving person, so he glared at the owner of the vegetable stall. The owner rolled her eyes at Li Yundong. "You don't have to pay taxes for rolling your eyes, do you?" she thought. Li Yundong might not have much of a future, but deep down, he was a proud and arrogant person. Thankfully, there was more than one vegetable seller in the market. Otherwise, Li Yundong wouldn't buy her vegetables even if he starved to death. After buying their groceries from another vegetable stall, the two of them carried their bags of groceries and prepared to leave. As soon as they left the market, Li Yundong saw Lu, the man he'd had a run-in with a few days ago, standing not too far away. The man was glaring at him with a dark expression. Lu glared at Li Yundong, then turned his attention to Su Chan. His eyes were filled with greed and lust. He tilted his head to the side and whispered something to a young man with dyed blonde hair and a denim suit. The young man nodded and stared at Su Chan with a lecherous smile. "Yeah, top quality. Top quality indeed. You have good taste, kid." Li Yundong's face darkened as he inched closer to Su Chan. Then he glanced behind him. To his surprise, there were 5 people behind him, all of them holding newspapers in their hands. It looked like there was a long, hard object hidden in the newspaper. Li Yundong's heart sank. He knew that today's situation wasn't going to end well. He knew the young man with the blonde hair. His name was Xueqi, a third-year economics student at Li Yundong University. He was a notorious hooligan who liked to fight and tease women. Li Yundong gathered all the groceries into one hand, then grabbed Su Chan's wrist with the other. "Run with me," he whispered. Su Chan froze for a moment. As a cultivator, she didn't see these gangsters as a threat at all, so she didn't know what was going on. She just let out a confused "ah," she asked. "Why are you running?" Li Yundong was so angry that he almost laughed out loud. There were 7 of them. If they didn't run, why would they stay and get beaten up? Li Yundong didn't know that he had been transformed by the Renyuan Jindan, so he didn't think of himself as a ruthless person like Jet Li or Zhen Ziden. Xueqi heard Su Chan's voice, and he burst into laughter. "Hey, pretty girl, why are you running? We're not going to do anything to you. Just have a meal with us." Chapter 10. Xueqi blocked the bag of vegetables that was hurtling towards him. Then, Li Yundong kicked him, sending him flying 2 meters away. He lay on the ground, clutching his chest, unable to breathe. Lu's eyes glinted dangerously. He pulled out a long watermelon knife from behind his back and swung it at Li Yundong. Tiannan City's economy had taken off in recent years, and its citizens' living standards had caught up to those of second-tier cities. However, the locals' tough personalities and customs hadn't changed much because of that. It was common for them to start fighting each other or even pull out their knives at the slightest disagreement. In the more remote and less developed streets, from time to time, there would always be gangsters fighting on the streets with iron rods and watermelon knives. Some of the more widespread gangs, even the police couldn't do anything to them. Lu and Xueqi were members of these underground gangs. They were used to running amok, so they carried knives with them at all times. Their attacks were merciless, and they always drew blood. Lu's knife was aimed at Li Yundong's arm, which was holding onto Su Chan's arm. Even though Li Yundong had swallowed a jindan, he was like Zhang Wuji, who had just started learning the 9-yang divine kung fu. Li Yundong had no idea how to use his jindan powers. Even with his jindan powers, Li Yundong's bones would still be broken if the knife hit him. Cold sweat broke out all over Li Yundong's body. Just as he was about to recover from his shock, he saw Su Chan turn around and kick Lu out of the way. Lu was sent flying. Su Chan had just kicked Lu away when she saw 3 more gangsters charging at them from the front. The 5 gangsters behind them also pulled out their weapons from their newspapers. All of them were shining watermelon knives. Li Yundong grabbed Su Chan and ran without a second thought. Su Chan, on the other hand, tried to run. "Let me go. Let me teach these bastards a lesson." "Are you crazy?" Li Yundong yelled. "There are so many of them and they have knives." In terms of physical strength, Li Yundong was no weaker than Su Chan. He pulled Su Chan into his arms, then picked her up in his arms and ran towards the school without saying a word. "Get him. Chop this man to death. Leave the woman." Xueqi clutched his chest and roared hoarsely in pain. "Put me down. Let me take care of these bastards." Su Chan said, still struggling. "Put me down. Let me deal with them." When the hooligans who were chasing after them heard this, they were furious. They gripped the knives in their hands tightly and grinned hideously. They gritted their teeth and thought, "I want to see who's going to deal with who." Although Li Yundong was holding Su Chan in his arms, he felt as light as a feather. The sudden conflict made his nerves highly tense, and the blood in his body seemed to be boiling fiercely. As he ran, he calmly observed his surroundings. This was a straight street with shops on both sides. In front of him were 3 aggressive gangsters, and behind him were 5 guys chasing him. Li Yundong made a decision in an instant. He quickly rushed toward a stall selling pan-fried pancakes in front of him on the right. The 3 gangsters who had been blocking Li Yundong's way in front of him rushed over and were about to slash at him with their knives, but they saw that he had taken advantage of the high speed of his charge and kicked the wall a few times. It was as if he was flying over eaves and walls. In the blink of an eye, he had circled behind the gangsters. When the gangsters turned around, they saw that Li Yundong had already landed on the ground and was running away with Su Chan in his arms. "What are you waiting for?" Xueqi said, standing up and rubbing his chest. "After him." The gangsters yelled and chased after Li Yundong one after another. The street was neither wide nor narrow. Most of the streets were restaurants and eateries that catered to students. It was close to the end of the morning classes, so there were a lot of students. The students watched as Li Yundong ran as fast as a galloping horse with Su Chan in his arms. His agility made him look like a parkour character in the movies. However, these people usually wore light clothes when they did parkour. None of them were as agile as Li Yundong, who was carrying a person in his arms. Some of the students wanted to take a picture of Li Yundong, but when they looked up, they realized that Li Yundong was already more than 10 meters away. All they could see was his back. Only then did the gangsters chasing after Li Yundong like a gust of wind, brandishing knives and cursing at the same time. Li Yundong ran for a while with Su Chan in his arms. He glanced out of the corner of his eye and saw that the gate of Tiannan University was not far from them. Li Yundong's heart skipped a beat. He ran towards the school with Su Chan in his arms. "These guys wouldn't dare to chase me into the school, would they?" Li Yundong regretted his decision as soon as he reached the school gate. It was the end of the school day. Many students who didn't want to eat in the cafeteria were heading out of the school to eat at the small restaurants nearby. Li Yundong saw the students walking out of the cafeteria in droves. There were so many of them that they looked like a tidal wave. Li Yundong ran at top speed with Xueqi in his arms. Lu and the rest of the gangsters were catching up to him. It was unrealistic to slow down or turn around. "Get out of the way!" Li Yundong yelled in a fit of rage. The students who were walking out of the school gate turned to look at him. Some of them recognized him. They sneered inwardly. "You're just a sophomore. What the hell are you doing?" Some of them didn't recognize him, so they chose to ignore him. Sunli stood in the middle of the crowd, staring at Li Yundong with a strange look on her face. She was just about to ask him what was going on when she saw the 10 thugs following behind Li Yundong. She was so scared that she wanted to duck to the side to avoid them. But it was too late. Li Yundong was running at full speed. If he hit Sunli, the girl would be sent flying like a sandbag with broken bones and broken tendons. Li Yundong was well aware of that. He gritted his teeth, pushed off the ground, and somersaulted over Sunli's head. The students at the school gate were in an uproar. How could someone do a somersault over the head of a girl who was about 165 meters tall with a person in his arms? Was he even human? Sunli felt a strong gust of wind, and then a shadow flew past her. By the time she came back to her senses, her back was covered in a layer of cold sweat. Xueqi, Lu, and the rest of the gangsters had caught up to Li Yundong. Xueqi and the rest of the gangsters' eyes were bloodshot. They didn't care that they were in the middle of a school. "Get the hell out of my way!" The students saw the knives in the gangsters' hands, and they parted to make a path for them. Li Yundong turned his head and saw that the gangsters had the audacity to chase him into the school. He cursed them in his heart, but he didn't dare to slow down. He kept running like crazy. Li Yundong attracted the attention of all the teachers and students in the school. When they saw the gangsters chasing him, they turned pale with fright and started yelling. Li Yundong had never been chased by anyone before. In his panic, he ran into a blind spot under the boys' dormitory. Li Yundong's back was instantly drenched in sweat. He turned his head and saw that the gangsters were in a rage. Their eyes were bloodshot. If they caught up to him, he would definitely be chopped into minced meat. He turned his head back and his mind raced. He didn't know why, but his eyes suddenly fell on the corner between the wall and the balcony of the dormitory. An idea popped into his head. As soon as the idea came to mind, Li Yundong sped up again, sprinting towards the blind spot. At that moment, Ding Nan and Xueqi came out of the girls' dormitory. They saw Li Yundong sprinting towards the corner like the wind. Ding Nan burst into laughter. "Is this guy trying to kill himself by hitting the wall?" Before Xueqi could say anything, Li Yundong suddenly stomped on the ground with one foot just as he was about to hit the wall. His body abruptly rose into the air, and his other foot kicked the wall at a right angle. It was as if all the blood in Li Yundong's body had condensed on his leg. His muscles contracted abruptly, and his tendons were like springs that had been compressed in an instant. Then, they stretched out in an instant. The force of that kick was no less than 1,000 catties. He stomped so hard that the wall caved in. Whoosh! Li Yundong's body abruptly rose into the air, and he flew towards the other wall in the blind spot, which was the wall of the balcony. The distance between them was only a little more than a meter. Li Yundong stomped on the wall of the balcony and exerted strength in his thighs again. Whoosh! 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 Li Yundong's figure was like a firecracker, rising bit by bit. He jumped left and right, his body as agile as a monkey, and his legs as strong as a tiger. After a few jumps, he jumped to the top of the 4th floor in just a few breaths. The students downstairs were dumbfounded. Their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. They only came back to their senses when Li Yundong carried Xueqi all the way to the roof. They were so excited that they couldn't control themselves. F***CK. Did you see that? F***CK. That's too awesome. Is he even human? Of course not. Did you take a picture? Take a picture? I'm dumbfounded. Who would remember to take a picture? What a pity. If I take a picture and it doesn't go viral on the internet, I'll chop my hand off. Xueqi and Ding Nan were also dumbfounded. Ding Nan said in a daze, "How is this possible? Isn't this too much? A strange look flashed across Zhou Qin's eyes. She stared at Li Yundong with shock and amazement in her eyes. By then, Xie Fei and Lu had caught up to them. They watched as Li Yundong carried Su Chan up to the roof like a cheetah. The color drained from their faces. Xie Fei's lackey was out of breath. "Brother Fei, this son of a bitch is too good at running," he said to Xie Fei. "He's like a monkey. How are we supposed to catch him?" Xie Fei glared at him. "Shut up." Xie Fei turned his head and looked at Lu. "Why didn't you tell me that this guy is a pain in the ass?" Lu's face darkened. "I didn't expect him to be so hard to deal with." Xie Fei curled his lips. He saw the teachers and security guards running towards them, so he turned to his lackeys and yelled, "Put away your knives. Do you think you're that cool? Do you want to go to the police station?" He glared at Li Yundong and Su Chan on the roof. "I refuse to believe that he'll be able to run like this forever." Chapter 11. Why didn't you let me teach those guys a lesson? Su Chan grumbled. Li Yundong didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "You're just a little girl. What are you talking about? Have you been watching too much Sassy Girlfriend?" Li Yundong thought to himself. "This isn't the way to go. I need to figure out a few self-defense moves." Li Yundong suddenly realized why he could suddenly unleash his full potential. He could run like this while carrying a person, and he could even leap up to the 4th floor. Li Yundong was amazed. Could it be that I suddenly unleashed my potential? I've heard before that the human body can unleash a tremendous amount of strength in times of crisis. Even a weak woman can lift a car. Could it be that I'm the same? No matter how Li Yundong thought about it, that was probably the case. There was no other explanation. Su Chan, on the other hand, thought that Li Yundong had swallowed a Renyuan Jindan, so the current situation was nothing to her. She even complained that Li Yundong didn't let her teach those bad guys a lesson. Su Chan puffed up her cheeks in anger for a while. Suddenly, she yelped, "Ah, money!" Li Yundong looked at Su Chan and realized that she was empty-handed. She looked at him timidly. "I lost the money you gave me." Li Yundong felt a pang in his heart. 1,000 grains of rice. Gone just like that? How did you lose it? Li Yundong asked, pretending that nothing had happened. "I don't remember." Su Chan looked at Li Yundong timidly and tugged at his shirt. "You're not mad, are you?" Li Yundong had been receiving a lot of living expenses from his parents ever since he was in junior high. Plus, he wasn't a big spender, so he had saved quite a bit of money over the years. 1,000 wasn't a small amount to him, but it wasn't a lot either. And the most important thing was that he didn't earn the money himself, so of course he wouldn't cherish it very much. Li Yundong sighed and smiled. Then, he ruffled Little Fox's hair. "You must have fallen off when they started chasing you," he said. "Never mind. It's good that you're fine." Li Yundong sighed, then smiled and stroked Little Fox's hair. Su Chan had no concept of money. Seeing that Li Yundong didn't take it to heart, she didn't take it to heart either. Oh! At this time, the ground floor of the dormitory building was in a mess. Many students picked up their phones and took pictures of Li Yundong and Su Chan on the roof. Some heartless students felt that the scene just now was not enough, so they shouted, "Jump down! Jump down!" Li Yundong was very angry in his heart. This group of animals are all gloating and want the world to be in chaos. "That's my roommate," Li Yundong's roommate said proudly. When they saw their former roommate on the roof, they pulled the pretty girls beside them and said, "That's my roommate." Some of the pretty girls didn't believe him and said with a look of disdain, "Just because you say so? I can say that I'm his girlfriend." One of the boys who had seen Li Yundong's little fox before burst into laughter. "You! Forget it! Even 100 of you can't compare to the one beside him." It was obvious that the boy who had just said this had a seriously low IQ and EQ. The pretty girl was pissed off. "What do you mean? Did you take the wrong medicine or stop taking it? If you took the wrong medicine, go to the hospital and get another one. If you stop taking it, go back to your room and take it. Don't be crazy here." The boy shrunk his head and was terrified. He muttered, "That's right. Why are you so fierce?" "What did you say?" the pretty girl said angrily. While they were arguing, a teacher and security officer rushed over and shouted from afar, What happened? What happened? Wu Hui, who had been hiding in the crowd all this time, stepped forward and added fuel to the fire. Director Chen, it's great that you're here. If you had come any later, there would have been a big mess. Director Chen was the dean of the school's disciplinary office. He was a middle-aged man with a mean face and a sparse hairstyle. Judging from the way his hair was distributed, he looked like he was from the east helping the west. Ah, Lil Wu. Director Chen's expression softened as soon as he saw Wu Hui. What happened here? He asked coquettishly. Wu Hui had had a conflict with Li Yundong before, and his father was on good terms with Director Chen. Wu Hui saw the opportunity to add insult to injury. Director Chen, he said. Li Yundong was in a scuffle with some hooligans inside the school grounds just now. He even had a knife drawn. Everyone here saw it. Wu Hui's words were extremely sarcastic. He had basically labeled Li Yundong as a scuffle with hooligans inside the school grounds. If Li Yundong was convicted of the crime, he would definitely be expelled or even arrested. Sun Li, who had been chasing after the crowd, heard what Wu Hui said. What the hell are you talking about, Wu Hui? It was those hooligans who chased after Li Yundong with knives. They didn't let him go even after he ran into the school grounds. What do you mean by scuffle with hooligans inside the school grounds? Scuffle? Scuffle? I didn't see anything. Some of the students who had witnessed the incident shouted, That's right. We didn't see anything either. Wu Hui's face darkened. He walked up to Sun Li and whispered, Sun Li, are you kidding me? Don't you hate this guy? You need to know what's going on before you speak. Wu Hui's last sentence was spoken in an odd tone. It was obvious that he was threatening Sun Li. Sun Li sneered and took a step back, as if she despised being associated with Wu Hui. I don't like this guy, she said. But I hate people who seek revenge for personal gain even more. Wu Hui's face darkened. Sun Li, who are you talking about? Who's seeking revenge for personal gain? Sun Li said coldly. You know very well who it is. Wu Hui's face darkened. Director Chen interrupted impatiently. What the hell is going on here? Wu Hui, you've just arrived, so it's not your fault that you didn't see the whole thing clearly. But if what Wu said is true, then we at Tiannan University will not let this slide. Director Chen was a sly old fox. With just a few words, he had managed to pull Wu Hui out of the picture. Then, he used his position to hint to the students and express his preference. Ding Nan, who had been watching Wu Hui coldly, rolled her eyes. She lowered her voice and said to Zhou Qin, Zhou Qin, that brat was so arrogant. He thought he was great just because he found a little fox. Why don't you? Zhou Qin glanced at her and thought for a moment. Then she slowly shook her head. Forget it, she said. It's better to forgive people when possible. Besides, he hasn't really offended me. But you, it seems like you have a grudge against him. Ding Nan was furious. Isn't it because of you that I have a grudge against him? Ding Nan smiled sheepishly. I was just saying. You're broad-minded. How can I compare to you? Zhou Qin smiled and walked toward Director Chen. Ding Nan looked at Zhou Qin's back with a gloomy look in her eyes. She gritted her teeth. You've done it, and now you want to keep your chastity. You hide away from all the bad things in the world and let me get involved. You take all the good things, but I don't get a share. Humph, Zhou Qin, Zhou Qin. Zhou Qin had no idea that the gaze behind her was so venomous. She walked up to Director Chen and said softly, Director Chen, I know a little about what happened. Director Chen turned his head and saw Zhou Qin standing in front of him. His gloomy face suddenly changed into a smile. It was as if he was standing in front of his boss, and the only thing missing was the wagging of his tail. Oh, someone's eyes are sharp after all. Zhou Qin, you came at the right time. What happened? Hurry up and tell me. Director Chen's attitude toward Zhou Qin was much warmer than Wu Hui's. The reason was simple. Zhou Qin's background was much stronger than Wu Hui's. There was a faint smile on Zhou Qin's face. She looked like a beautiful lady from a wealthy family, but in reality, she gave off a cold aura that kept people at arm's length. Director Chen, what happened is basically the same as what Sun Li said. I saw it too, and I think the other students in the school can testify to this. Is that so? Zhou Qin raised her head and looked left and right. Yes, sir. Zhou Qin said in unison. The boys were completely smitten by Xueqi. Yes, sir. Director Chen said. Now that the matter was settled, Director Chen decided. So that's how it is. Where is Li Yundong? There was a staircase at the top of the male dormitory building. To Li Yundong's surprise, the door to the dormitory was unlocked. By the time Li Yundong and Su Chan came down from the staircase, the dormitory building was already packed with students. Director Chen was sweating profusely. The moment Director Chen saw Li Yundong, he froze in shock. He wasn't the only one. All the other students in the dormitory were stunned as well. The noisy crowd below the dormitory building quieted down in an instant. Xueqi, who was standing next to Director Chen, frowned. Director Chen, this is Li Yundong, she said softly. You can ask him about what happened today. Director Chen snapped out of his daze. He glanced at Su Chan, who was standing next to Li Yundong, with a complicated look in his eyes. Then, he turned to Li Yundong and asked him about the incident in detail. After that, he told Li Yundong to submit a report to the Office of Academic Affairs tomorrow. Before he left, Director Chen glanced at Li Yundong one more time and shook his head. Why is this guy's girlfriend so pretty? What's so good about him? After Director Chen left, Li Yundong walked up to Sun Li and smiled. Class rep, you're the one who stood up for justice. You heard that? Sun Li asked in surprise. You heard it from so far away? Li Yundong laughed. Of course. Justice is loud and clear. It's hard for me not to hear it. The corner of Sun Li's mouth curled up slightly, but she quickly regained her composure. I'm just stating the facts. You've been leaving school early recently. Do you really not want your credits anymore? If you keep this up, you won't even be able to graduate before anyone else does anything to you. Li Yundong didn't take Sun Li's words to heart. Graduate students are everywhere these days, and college students are as common as dogs. What's the point of getting a diploma from a crappy school? A job pushing a dung cart is fought over by over 100 college students. College students these days. If it weren't for the so-called promise he made to his parents who abandoned him, he wouldn't even bother to attend this crappy school. Despite his thoughts, Li Yundong smiled at Sun Li politely. Class rep, you really do love me. You helped me a lot today. Let me treat you to dinner. Sun Li blushed. She glanced at Xueqi, who was walking away with Ding Nan. What the hell are you talking about? Who cares about you? You have such a beautiful girl by your side, and you still want to flirt with other girls? Li Yundong looked at Su Chan awkwardly. He didn't mean to flirt with Sun Li. Even though the Sichuan little pepper had a good figure, Li Yundong's mind was on Su Chan. But he had a bad habit. Whenever he was around girls, he couldn't help but flirt with them. He would only be happy if he flirted with them until their faces turned red. If he were a handsome guy, he would probably flirt with them until the girl's face turned red. But he wasn't, so he could only let the girl roll her eyes. Li Yundong noticed that Su Chan was staring curiously at Xueqi, who was standing not far away from him. Her eyes were sparkling, as if she hadn't noticed him talking to Sun Li. Li Yundong let out a sigh of relief. What the hell am I doing? Why are you talking like that all of a sudden? Why are you talking to Su Chan? Sun Li caught Su Chan's gaze. If you want to thank someone, go thank Xueqi. She was the one who explained the whole thing to you. Otherwise, you can figure it out yourself. Li Yundong was surprised. Xueqi? Her? Sun Li raised an eyebrow. What else do you think? Li Yundong stared at Xueqi's back and nodded. That's rare. I can't believe this icy beauty would speak up for justice. Sun Li snorted. That's not very nice of you to say. She's speaking up for you, and you're talking about her behind her back? Why don't you go over and thank her? Li Yundong looked at Sun Li and smiled. Yes, class rep, you have to take the preschool education exam after you graduate. Otherwise, it would be a waste of your talent. You go thank Xueqi, Sun Li snapped. Why are you dragging me into this? You just confessed your love to her, and now she's turning around to help you? Who knows? Maybe there's a silver lining at the end of the tunnel. Li Yundong burst into laughter. He was just about to say something flirtatious. But I never confessed my love to you, so why are you helping me? Fortunately, Li Yundong swallowed the words that were on the tip of his tongue. Sun Li rolled her eyes at Li Yundong, as if she knew what he was going to say next. Li Yundong, I need to remind you not to act so flirtatious in front of your girlfriend, she said in an annoyed tone. Then, she turned around and headed for the school building. Her long black hair bounced in the air. Li Yundong stood there in a daze. Am I flirtatious? No way, right? He turned to look at Su Chan, only to see her staring at Zhou Qin. Her eyes were glowing, and there was a hint of fanaticism and excitement in them. Li Yundong looked at Zhou Qin as well. What's wrong with this girl? Why is she behaving like a cat that smelled fish? Oh no, she's not a lesbian, is she? Li Yundong looked at Zhou Qin, his eyes filled with confusion. Just then, Zhou Qin happened to be standing at the foot of the dormitory building. She turned around and looked at him. Their eyes met. Li Yundong nodded at Zhou Qin to show his gratitude. Zhou Qin's face was expressionless. She didn't react at all, but when she looked at Li Yundong, her gaze was less disdainful and more curious. Chapter 12. Su Chan sighed softly, her heart filled with joy as she praised. Her flesh and bones are well proportioned, her eyebrows are thick, her nose is straight, her forehead is full, her 3 temples are well proportioned, her middle is wide, deep and long, her temples are soft, her waist is narrow, her hips are wide, and her spirit is perfect. She is truly a 1 in a million pure-een beauty. Li Yundong was startled. He reached out to touch Su Chan's forehead. What's wrong with you? What are you mumbling about? What great furnace? Su Chan averted her gaze. I was praising her. Li Yundong gave her a strange look. Are you praising her? Are you praising her by saying she's a great furnace? Hey, don't treat me like an idiot. I know a little about what a furnace is, okay? I've read Huang Yi's Overturning the Rain and the Clouds before. Okay? Su Chan blinked. You know about it? That's great. Su Chan pulled Li Yundong out of the crowd and looked around. Go after her, she whispered, a sly look in her eyes. Go after her, Yundong. You can't let go of such a great furnace. From the little fox's point of view, the Yin Qi in Zhou Qin's body belonged to the rare kind of pure Yin in the world, while the powerful and vigorous Jin Dan Yuan Qi in Li Yundong's body belonged to the rare kind of pure Yang in the world. As long as the two of them were combined and the Yin and Yang interacted, Li Yundong would definitely benefit a lot. Li Yundong didn't look like someone who wanted to actively cultivate, so Su Chan didn't dare to take the initiative to confess. All she could do was think of a way to indirectly increase Li Yundong's primordial Yang Qi. Harvesting Yin to replenish Yang was undoubtedly a good idea. But Su Chan's mistake was that she always used the mindset of a cultivator to guess the mindset of a normal person. Li Yundong almost banged his head against the wall when he heard what Su Chan said. He stared at Su Chan with a blank expression on his face, unable to speak for a long time. What does this girl mean by that? She's actually encouraging me to hit on Zhou Qin? Is she testing me? Or is she just being stupid? Or could it be that she didn't care about me at all? Otherwise, why would she encourage me to hit on another woman? Li Yundong felt depressed in his heart. It was as if he had chewed wax in his mouth. He walked back in silence. Puzzled by his reaction, Su Chan followed obediently behind him. Did I say something wrong again? She muttered to herself. I didn't say it wrong. This girl is a pure Yin beauty, a good cauldron that can't be found even once in 10,000. If those who practiced dual cultivation saw this, they would definitely fight over it. Could it be that he didn't like it? That can't be. This girl is so beautiful. Master said that men are all lustful. The little fox followed behind Li Yundong with a belly full of suspicions, her mind a jumble of thoughts. Li Yundong was also letting his imagination run wild along the way. The two of them were guessing each other's thoughts at odds with each other. Along the way, he felt very depressed and depressed. Li Yundong slapped his thigh and cursed out loud. Damn it! He slapped his thigh and cursed. Those F***ers made me throw away my vegetables. What are we eating tonight? Seeing that he had finally spoken, Little Fox felt relieved. It was as if a 10,000-kilogram boulder had been lifted off her shoulders. Can't we go buy some more? Li Yundong sneered. Go to that market again? Forget it. I'm not going there for the rest of my life. Even though Little Fox's way of thinking was different from the average person's, she was no fool. She realized that she was the one who had caused all of this to happen. I'm sorry. I caused you a lot of trouble. She looked up and stared at Li Yundong pitifully. You can scold me all you want, she said, tugging at the corner of Li Yundong's shirt guiltily. I'm sorry. I caused you so much trouble. No matter how angry Li Yundong was, he couldn't bring himself to vent his anger on such a pitiful beauty. He sighed inwardly. Don't be silly. How could I possibly bear to scold you? Li Yundong smiled. Let's go. We're not eating at home today. I'll take you to McDonald's. McDonald's? Su Chan asked. What's a McDonald's? Li Yundong smiled. It's fast food. Simple and convenient. Is it good? Su Chan asked. Li Yundong thought for a moment. It's okay. You'll know once you try it. The nearest McDonald's to Tiannan University was only a 10-minute walk away. Li Yundong led Su Chan all the way to McDonald's. It was noon, and the sun was as bright as a roulette wheel. The ground was steaming under the white rays of the sun. Su Chan followed Li Yundong closely, looking around curiously. The skyscrapers and traffic in the city were a stark contrast to the mountains and forests she had been cultivating in. Along the way, Su Chan kept asking Li Yundong questions. To her, everything was new and interesting. She had a smile on her face the entire time. This kind of smile made Li Yundong feel cool and comfortable even though he was under the scorching sun. The slight doubts and unhappiness he had had before were quickly forgotten. The two of them chatted and laughed along the way until they reached the entrance of McDonald's. There was a long bench in front of the McDonald's, and a clown-like Mr. McDonald was sitting on it. Just as they were about to open the door, the clown-like Mr. McDonald screamed and jumped up from the side. In his hand was a toy that looked like a mouse that had just jumped out of a box. Li Yundong and Su Chan walked up to the McDonald's. Startled, Su Chan subconsciously threw a punch at the clown. Poor Uncle McDonald fell backward. The toy fell to the ground, and the mouse jumped in and out of the box. Shocked, Li Yundong hurried over to help the clown up. Hey, are you okay? Li Yundong didn't know if he hadn't helped him, but as soon as he did, he felt the softness of the man's hand. The man was thin and small, and he let out a groan. Ha! A girl? Li Yundong felt even more guilty. He looked up at Su Chan and said, Why aren't you apologizing? Su Chan puffed up her cheeks. Who told her to scare me? The McDonald girl took off her fake nose and rubbed her red, swollen nose. It's fine, she said in a muffled voice. I'm used to it. A few more times, and I won't have to wear a fake nose anymore. Li Yundong chuckled. You're such a good-tempered person. Why did this McDonald's hire a girl to pretend to be Uncle McDonald? Do you think you can handle wearing so many layers on such a hot day? The girl's face was covered in oil paint. She smiled. I need to make money. All right, I'm fine now. You can go in now. Remember to order more food, okay? Li Yundong smiled. Of course. Do you want me to buy you some too? It's our fault after all. The girl waved her hand. No, thank you. After confirming that the girl was fine, he stood up and walked over to Su Chan. He gave her a deep look and sighed. Su Chan's head was lowered. She looked like a child who had done something wrong. From time to time, she would look up at Li Yundong. She felt so wronged. It was clearly someone else's fault, but she made it seem like it was her fault. She had made more mistakes in the secular world than she had in the 10 years she had spent in the mountains. Forget it, Li Yundong said, patting Su Chan's head. Let's go eat. The two of them walked into the McDonald's. The place was packed. Su Chan's pure, charming, classic, and sexy attire attracted everyone's attention. The men looked at Su Chan greedily, and then they looked at Li Yundong enviously. Li Yundong found a seat close to the children's area and sat down. Wait here for me, he said to Su Chan. Then he stood up and walked over to the counter to buy 2 set meals and 2 ice cream cones. Li Yundong walked over to Su Chan and handed her an ice cream cone. Have a taste, he said with a smile. Su Chan took the ice cream cone curiously. She stuck out her tongue and licked it tentatively. It's so sweet, Li Yundong said. Li Yundong smiled. Of course. McDonald's ice cream is made with imported ingredients. It's so much better than KFC's. Su-chan licked the ice cream with her tongue. She had no time to care about what Li Yundong was saying. Li Yundong stared at Su-chan, who was licking the ice cream with her tongue. She looked so adorable that he couldn't wait to pull her into his arms and dote on her. In particular, the girl's pink lips and bright red tongue formed a sharp contrast with the snow-white ice cream, especially when Su-chan sucked and licked the ice cream slowly. Suddenly, Li Yundong had a very lewd image of a scene that was rigged. Li Yundong couldn't help but grin wickedly. If only she could lick me like she's licking this ice cream, he murmured. Then I'll die under a peony's skirt. I'll die a romantic death. Li Yundong muttered under his breath. Just when Su-chan thought that licking the ice cream wasn't enough, she opened her mouth and took a bite out of the cone. What did you say? She asked in a muffled voice as she chewed on the cone. What did you say? Li Yundong couldn't help but feel a twinge in his balls. He squeezed his thighs together and said, Nothing. Let's eat. Su-chan gave Li Yundong a strange look. What a weird guy, she muttered. Li Yundong rolled his eyes inwardly. You're even weirder than me, aren't you? Su-chan gobbled down the ice cream cone until her mouth was covered in ice cream. Li Yundong was both annoyed and amused. He handed her a napkin and said, Wipe your mouth. Su-chan took the napkin, a little confused. What's wrong? Li Yundong couldn't take it anymore. He picked up the napkin, stood up, and wiped the ice cream from Su-chan's mouth. Su-chan looked at him and giggled. You look so silly right now, she said. You look so silly. Li Yundong laughed. I'm silly? You're the silly one. You're as silly as a little tabby cat. Su-chan snorted. I'm not silly. I'm a fox. I mean, the smartest one in my school. Even my master praised me. Little Fox almost blurted out her origins in a moment of carelessness. After she was done, she secretly grinned and stuck out her tongue. Li Yundong chuckled. You're smart? Fine. Let me ask you. There are 7 birds on the tree. If you shoot down one of them, how many are left? Su-chan huffed. I can't believe you're testing me with such a simple question. Are you trying to piss me off? Of course there are 6 left. Li Yundong burst into laughter. Idiot. Idiot. There's not a single one left. The dead one fell off the tree. Of course the rest were scared away. Little Fox was a little dumbfounded. Her eyes widened. How could she have imagined that the people in the mortal world who had nothing better to do could come up with such a brain twister that could kill a person? She bit her lip. It doesn't count. It doesn't count. Come on. Give me another one. Li Yundong thought to himself, if I tell this kind of old joke to anyone else, I'll be despised. Only a silly girl like you will be interested in it. Then let me ask you again. There are 7 birds on the tree. If I shoot down one of them with a gun, how many of them will be left? Su-chan grew even angrier. You're asking the same question twice? That's not how you look down on me. Of course there's not a single one left. Li Yundong burst into laughter. Idiot. Idiot. There's still one left. The one at the bottom of the tree. Su-chan slammed the table and leaped to her feet. You scoundrel. You asked me how many are left on the tree. Li Yundong chuckled. But I said how many are left. Of course, that includes the dead bird on the ground. Su-chan's eyes widened. You can do that. Seeing that she was in a daze, Li Yundong smiled and said, Do you know how this bird died? Su-chan's anger flared up. She opened her mouth to curse. Didn't you just say that you killed it with a gun? But then she remembered the lesson she'd been taught. How did it die? Su-chan asked meekly. Li Yundong burst into laughter. You idiot. Of course it died because of your stupidity. Su-chan stared at him blankly for a long time. It was a gun. Why did it die of stupidity? She asked. The other customers who'd been eavesdropping on the conversation between Li Yundong and Su-chan couldn't help but burst into laughter. Seeing her silly look, Li Yundong couldn't help but reach out to pinch her nose and say, You silly bird, didn't you die of stupidity? Su-chan slapped Li Yundong's hand away and sat down angrily. I'm not going to talk to you anymore. You're a bully. You're the stupid bird. Li Yundong couldn't stop laughing, which made Su-chan feel a little embarrassed and angry. Just then, The girl who disguised herself as McDonald's walked into the children's area and started playing with the children. She held a fruit basket in her hand and asked the 13 children in the children's area loudly, "I have 8 apples here, but you have 13 children. How are we going to split them?" McDonald's and KFC also had this kind of activity. The girl just wanted the children to follow Kong Rong's example. The rest of the apples would be split later on. But Xueqi, who'd been teased by Li Yundong all this time, couldn't take it anymore. She couldn't accept the fact that she was a stupid bird. She wanted to prove herself. Xueqi shot to her feet. "I know how to split them," she yelled. The girl looked at her strangely. "How?" she asked cooperatively. "Kill 5 of them," Xueqi said smugly. Chapter 13. After a brief silence in the McDonald's store, there was a sudden burst of laughter. Xueqi looked around blankly. She realized that she had said something wrong again. She sat down with a wronged look on her face. "I didn't say anything wrong. In the cultivation world, where there are 13 people fighting over 8 Dharma treasures, wouldn't it be better to kill 5 of them first?" She muttered to herself. She sat in her seat and was laughed at by everyone. Her mouth was pouting and her eyes were watery. She lowered her head like a little wife who had been bullied. Li Yundong laughed for a long time. As he rubbed his stomach, he said with a smile, "Hurry up and eat. Stop talking. The more you talk, the more mistakes you'll make." "Oh," Xueqi said, feeling wronged. She turned her grief into appetite and started to vent her anger on the hamburger. It only took her 2 or 3 bites to finish it. Li Yundong waited for her to finish eating, then pulled her out of the McDonald's. As the 2 of them walked down the street, Li Yundong couldn't stop himself from laughing so hard every time he thought about what had just happened. Xueqi followed behind Li Yundong with her head lowered. Her face was flushed red from all the laughing. Back at home, Xueqi suddenly stopped in her tracks and raised her head. Her eyes were filled with tears. "Am I really that stupid?" she asked. Li Yundong was startled. "This girl is so miserable. She's even starting to doubt her own IQ because of a few brain teasers." Li Yundong realized that he had laughed too much and hurt the girl's self-esteem. He quickly comforted her. "You're not stupid," he said. "It's just that the questions were too tricky. They were meant for jokes. You're very smart, really." "You lied to me," Xueqi said with tears in her eyes. "If I lied to you, I'll be struck by lightning." Li Yundong swore. When Xueqi heard this, she immediately believed him. In the cultivation world, there was nothing more powerful than the 5 thunders of heaven. She sniffled and wiped away her tears. "Well, I believe you." Li Yundong breathed a sigh of relief. "Oh right. Our Xueqi is beautiful and smart. She's the embodiment of beauty and wisdom. How could she be stupid?" Xueqi smiled through her tears. "I'm not your Xueqi, you shameless bastard." Xueqi's shy expression made Li Yundong's heart beat faster. For a moment, he was a little dazed as he looked at this beautiful face. Xueqi also looked at Li Yundong's passionate eyes. For some reason, she also felt a little infatuated. The 2 of them looked at each other, and the air rippled with a tempting ambiguity. It was ticklish and warm. Li Yundong suddenly had a strong impulse to hold the girl in his arms, kiss her, love her, but he didn't dare. He was afraid that the girl in front of him was a beautiful bubble. As soon as he reached out, she would burst, disappear and disappear. Xueqi fixed her gaze on Li Yundong as she inched closer to him. Her unique body fragrance slowly assaulted his nostrils. It was as if there was a hidden fragrance floating in the air, making Li Yundong's mouth dry up. Li Yundong felt that his heart was stirring. He was looking forward to something happening and wanted to do something. Just as he was about to take action, Xueqi, who was right in front of him, opened her big, bright eyes and asked, "Can I ask you a question?" Li Yundong swallowed hard. His heart was beating like a drum. "What do you want to ask?" he stammered. Xueqi blinked. "Why did that bird die of stupidity?" Li Yundong. Xueqi stared at Li Yundong, who had turned around and started banging his head against the wall. "What's wrong?" she asked. "Nothing," Li Yundong said, tears streaming down his cheeks. Li Yundong didn't have any classes that afternoon, so he stayed in the living room in a daze, thinking about everything that had happened in the past few days. Su Chan, on the other hand, kept circling around Li Yundong, trying to figure out why the bird died of stupidity. Li Yundong lay on the fluffy carpet in the living room with his hands as a pillow. He closed his eyes and thought, what happened today was really scary but not dangerous. Why did I suddenly become so good at fighting? Li Yundong thought, I can actually climb up to the 4th floor? I wouldn't even have dared to think about it in the past. Could it be that being in the presence of a beautiful woman had stimulated all of my potential? That's possible. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. No, I have to learn some martial arts. Otherwise, I'll be chased by people again. Li Yundong knew very well in his heart that it would have been fine if he didn't have the ability to protect himself. Now that he had Su Chan by his side, he would definitely be in endless trouble. If he didn't have the ability to protect himself, he would definitely be at a disadvantage. With that in mind, Li Yundong decided that going to the Taekwondo club to learn Taekwondo would be a good idea. Tiannan University had a lot of clubs, but the Taekwondo club was the only club that specialized in martial arts. Plus, because of Zhao Yujian, the school hunk, the Taekwondo club was filled with beautiful girls. Plus, Taekwondo was easy to learn and enjoyable to watch. I bet Su Chan will support me when the time comes, right? Li Yundong rolled over and got ready to sleep. Suddenly, he felt something itchy on his face, as if he had touched something hairy. Li Yundong opened his eyes and was startled. Su Chan was crouched in front of him. Her silky black hair cascaded down her back like a waterfall. She was hugging a pillow, and her dark eyes shone like jewels in the night. What are you doing here? Li Yundong asked. Why don't you make a sound when you walk? Yundong, I still don't get it. Why did that bird die of stupidity? Su Chan asked, blinking her eyes. Yundong, I still don't get it. Li Yundong sighed. He grabbed the pillow next to him and covered his face with it. Please let me go. The next day, Li Yundong opened his eyes with dark circles under his eyes. Su Chan had been pestering him for the whole night. No matter what explanation Li Yundong gave her, she just couldn't get enough of it. It hurts. I want to sleep. Li Yundong hugged the pillow and rolled around on the carpet. Su Chan had changed her clothes long ago. She even sat down on the bed and circulated her qi twice. Then, she walked out of the bedroom feeling refreshed. She crouched down in front of Li Yundong. What's wrong? Aren't you supposed to go to school today? Li Yundong snorted. School, not school. What day and age are we in? School. Su Chan looked closely at Li Yundong's dark circles. You didn't sleep well last night, did you? Li Yundong sat up and pretended to be nonchalant. Of course not. I'm full of energy right now. I can fight a tiger in the mountains and catch a dragon in the sea. Su Chan covered her mouth and giggled. Your mouth stinks. Li Yundong's face fell. He went to the bathroom to wash up. After a while, the two of them walked out of the room. As soon as Li Yundong entered the school, he noticed that a lot of people were pointing at him. It was like a flower had grown on his face. Li Yundong touched his cheek. What's wrong with me? Su Chan looked at Li Yundong seriously. Your eye sockets are sunken, and your glabella is dark. Li Yundong interrupted her before she could finish. Holy shit. Dark glabella? Am I going to die? That's what happens when the heart and kidney are not in sync, Su Chan said. You're not going to die. Li Yundong rolled his eyes. Li Yundong and Su Chan sat in the back row of the class. Throughout the entire class, both boys and girls kept glancing at the back of the class. This time, most of their attention was focused on Li Yundong. Not Su Chan. Li Yundong and Su Chan sat in the back row of the class. Li Yundong could vaguely hear them whispering to each other. Words like parkour emperor, leaping onto roofs and vaulting over walls, awesome, and so on. Some of them even talked about the dark circles under his eyes, saying things like, must be overworked and excessive demands. Li Yundong didn't feel much about these discussions, because he felt that he was too tired and sleepy. Yesterday's parkour had consumed a lot of his physical strength. Although he had taken the Jindan's divine power, before he could transform the Jindan's primordial yang into his own true essence and practice the golden body, his body would still be tired and sleepy. It didn't take long for Li Yundong to fall asleep in his seat. Su Chan saw that Li Yundong had fallen asleep, so she stood up on her own accord and walked to the back row. Using the three-pronged flower technique, she started massaging Li Yundong's qi. The circulation of qi could greatly relieve fatigue. Su Chan's fingers danced around Li Yundong's head, massaging the Tianzhu, Chengling, Fengqi, Yuzhen, and other vital acupoints on his head. Her gentle and adorable demeanor made the boys around her green with envy. They gritted their teeth in hatred. I'm still single, but this guy who's been single for 8 lifetimes is showing off like this. Damn it! This time, when Li Yundong woke up, Su Chan had already finished massaging him. He didn't make any sweat-inducing moans. Su Chan stayed by Li Yundong's side until school was over. She didn't cause any trouble, either. It looked like yesterday's incident had really upset her. After school, Li Yundong headed to the Taekwondo club. Su Chan followed him closely. The Taekwondo club was located on the 2nd floor of the multimedia building on the west side of the university. Li Yundong saw several rows of bronze plaques hanging at the entrance of the building. One of them read, Tiannan City Taekwondo Association, Tiannan University Branch. Back when Li Yundong was a freshman, there used to be a karate club here. Unfortunately, Zhao Yujian, the president of the Taekwondo club, destroyed it and disbanded it. Since then, Zhao Yujian, the school hunk, had become famous and had countless fans at Tiannan University. Li Yundong had been at Tiannan University for almost 2 years, but he had never been to this place before. He looked around as he entered the building. The music club was located on the 1st floor, and he could hear the faint sound of music coming from each of the piano rooms. Most of the pretty girls who walked in and out of the club were from the arts department. Each of them had a slender figure and a picturesque face. Normally, Li Yundong would have been drooling at the entrance of the club and being looked down upon by the pretty girls. But now that he had a femme fatale, Su Chan, by his side, Li Yundong couldn't help but look down on the pretty girls he used to think were the best. It was the mentality of a nouveau riche. The pretty girls who walked in and out of the club were shocked and amazed when they saw Su Chan standing beside Li Yundong. When they looked at Li Yundong again, their eyes were filled with curiosity and confusion. Chapter 14. Taekwondo and karate were very similar in this respect. They were all about gaining the upper hand with a show of strength. They liked to make sharp and powerful shouts during combat to intimidate their opponents. Li Yundong followed the sound and found the Taekwondo club on the right side of the 2nd floor of the building. As soon as he entered the door, he saw a Taekwondo sign hanging on the door, wearing a white robe and doing a high side kick. A round-faced beauty came up to him and said enthusiastically, "Hello, classmate. Are you here too?" Suddenly, she covered her mouth and exclaimed, "Ah, you're Li Yundong?" Li Yundong looked at her in surprise. "Do you know me?" The round-faced girl smiled. "Who in Tiannan University doesn't know you now? The King of Confessions has transformed into the King of Parkour." The girl nudged Li Yundong with her elbow and said with a smile, "Hey, give me an autograph." Li Yundong couldn't help but laugh. "Me? What did I sign? No, no, no. Are you making fun of me?" The round-faced girl persisted. "Now your video is at the top of the school forum. You'll definitely become famous in the future. I saw you carrying a beautiful girl all the way from the 1st floor to the 4th floor. You were even more awesome than Jackie Chan." I was dumbfounded. I only wish I had taken a picture of it. The corner of Li Yundong's eye twitched. He thought to himself, "What the F***CK? Why are these guys so bored?" The girl pestered Li Yundong for a while. Seeing that Li Yundong was stubborn, she reluctantly took out a form from the reception desk and handed it to Li Yundong. "Then you have to come to the Taekwondo club to sign up, right? Do you want to fill out this form first?" Then, she looked at Su Chan with amazement and jealousy in her eyes. She muttered to herself, "She's so beautiful." No wonder Li Yundong hugged her so fiercely. The round-faced girl looked at Su Chan. Her attitude was obviously not as enthusiastic as Li Yundong's. "Pretty girl, do you want to sign up too?" Even now, Su Chan still had no idea what Taekwondo was. She looked at Li Yundong as if she was asking for his opinion. Li Yundong thought for a moment and said, "Come with me. If you also want to learn, it won't be too late to sign up." After filling in the registration form, The round-faced girl rolled her eyes and took out another form, saying, "Please fill in another one. We want to keep 2 copies." After Li Yundong took the form and filled it in, the round-faced girl smiled smugly. "See, I got the autograph, didn't I? This is your first autograph, right? Ha, when you become famous, I'll be rich." The round-faced girl giggled. "I'll be your first fan." Li Yundong watched as she proudly waved the form in her hand. Sure enough, his signature was on it. Li Yundong shook his head and laughed. Cupping his hands, he said, "Wow, you're really something. I'm impressed." The round-faced beauty smiled and said, "Do you want to pay the 200 yuan registration fee now, or do you want to take a look and practice with the club for a month first?" "What's the difference between the two?" Li Yundong smiled. "The former is that you become a member of our club, and you can participate in all kinds of club activities. If your results are good, the club will even recommend you to participate in all kinds of competitions. The latter is that you can practice with us for a month, and we won't charge you anything during this period. However, you have to rent your own taekwondo uniform, and if you're not interested in the club after a month, you're free to leave the club." Li Yundong nodded. He didn't need money anyway, so he pulled out 200 yuan from his pocket and said, "I'll pay up first." After paying the bill, the round-faced beauty led Li Yundong from the front desk to the lobby with a smile on her face. "This is a new member of our club. His name is Li Yundong," she said to a boy in a taekwondo uniform with a red belt tied around his waist. The boy was tall and well-built, but his face was full of pimples, like dough that had been fried. The moment he saw Li Yundong walk in, his eyes fell on Xueqi. Shock and amazement filled his eyes. He only snapped out of his daze after the round-faced beauty repeated the name twice. Then, he shot Li Yundong a look of extreme jealousy and hostility. "You're the new junior?" Pimples snorted through his nose and stood in front of Li Yundong. He looked down at Li Yundong with eyes full of provocation and disdain. Li Yundong frowned inwardly. He didn't like the way Pimples looked at him and his tone. But for the sake of learning fighting techniques, he tolerated it. "Yes, I am. Take care of me, senior." Pimples glanced at Li Yundong. "Come with me." He led Li Yundong and Xueqi to a corner of the lobby, where all kinds of equipment were laid out. Most of them were fitness equipment, but some were testing equipment. Pimple Man kept staring at Xueqi until she rolled her eyes at him. Only then did he avert his gaze greedily. When he turned to Li Yundong, his voice was filled with hostility and pride. "This is a machine to test your strength," he said. "Let me give it a try first." At that moment, there were quite a few girls drinking water from the water dispenser in the lobby. There were also a few girls buying water from the refrigerator. All of them were looking in Li Yundong's direction with disdain on their faces. They knew full well that there was no need for these things to be tested on new club members. But Pimples just happened to want to show off in front of the beautiful girl standing next to Li Yundong. That was why he had brought Li Yundong to the strength testing machine to show off. The worst part was that some of the other boys in the lobby had rushed over to the machine as well, eager to show off in front of Xueqi. Their childish behavior pissed the girls off. What made them even more pissed was that these guys had been fawning over them just a moment ago, but now they were treating them like air. This was intolerable. And so, the girls chose to watch from the sidelines while cursing in their hearts. "Little fox, slutty fox, vixen." Pimple Man cracked his neck and massaged his wrists. Then, he took a lunging stance, took a deep breath, and punched the strength test panel with all his might. After a few beeps, a row of numbers popped up on the screen. 289 pounds. Gasps of surprise immediately rang out from the crowd. "Holy shit! Brother Zheng's punching strength has improved again." Yeah. Last time he tested it, he only punched 257 pounds. That's almost 140 pounds of force in one punch. Scary. This is too scary. If he gets hit, he'll be dead for sure. The boys in the lobby started talking among themselves. Pimples turned to Li Yundong with a smug look on his face. "Come on, give it a try. Of course, don't compare yourself to me. I've been training for a long time to achieve this result. You'd be lucky if you could hit 200 pounds of force in one punch." Deep down, Li Yundong was pissed. He wanted nothing more than to punch this guy in the face. But right now there were so many eyes on him. If he didn't do it, he'd be embarrassed. especially since almost all the boys around him were looking at him like they were looking down on him. This made Li Yundong extremely pissed. Even the girls who were looking at him sympathetically didn't think he could win. Su Chan was the only one who encouraged Li Yundong in a low voice. "Yundong," she said. "You'll definitely beat him." Li Yundong's heart warmed up when he heard that. Su Chan was still the most considerate girl in a critical moment. Li Yundong mimicked Pimple's actions. He twisted his neck and wrists and took a lunge. He took a deep breath, held it, and threw a heavy punch. As Li Yundong threw the punch, he suddenly felt a warm current rush up from his lower abdomen. Once again, the feeling of being full of energy from running appeared in his body. Like a raging torrent, the heat rushed from Li Yundong's body to his arms, wrists, and fists. There was a loud bang, and a row of numbers appeared on the display panel of the strength testing machine. 513 pounds. Hiss. The boys around him sucked in a breath of cold air. Their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. 513 pounds. Even Tyson's punch only weighs 498 pounds. How is that even possible? The surrounding girls exclaimed and said one after another, "That's impossible, right? Could the machine have malfunctioned?" Pimple's eyes widened and he sucked in a breath of cold air. The machine must have malfunctioned. How is that even possible? Even Li Yundong stared blankly at the numbers displayed on the machine, then at his own fist. He couldn't believe that he could have punched such a high number either. Little Fox was the only one who had a matter-of-fact expression on her face. She was laughing at the crowd inwardly. What a bunch of inexperienced fellows. Yundong is reborn from a Jindan. Although he hasn't fully revealed his true strength, his punch has already surpassed that of an ordinary person in this world. Renyuan Jindan is known as the elixir of the world. How could it be a joke? Su Chan looked at Li Yundong with a smug look on her face, as if she was the one who had brought the limelight just now. Pimple's dead fish eyes stared at Li Yundong for a long time. He looked Li Yundong up and down, then shook his head vigorously. Turning to the round-faced girl he said, "Feng Na, could you please register that the strength testing machine is broken? Have someone come and fix it tomorrow." Feng Na nodded, but a trace of disdain flashed across her eyes. "As your first fan, I support you," she said to Li Yundong. "The machine isn't working." Li Yundong smiled at her. Pimple's face darkened. "What are you talking about, Feng Na?" Feng Na glanced at him. "There's nothing wrong with your results, but there's something wrong with someone else's." "How could there be such a thing? Don't you know that he's the guy who did parkour with a girl in his arms at school yesterday?" As soon as Feng Na finished speaking, the surrounding students let out a collective gasp. "Holy shit! He's the parkour guy? I couldn't tell at all." "Yeah, that guy's face is so fat. I couldn't tell at all. If he can parkour like that, then I can be an action star." "You guys are useless. Just because you're useless, you think everyone else is as useless as you are? Why don't you try running around with a girl in your arms? Opposites attract. Girls always found it easy to side with the guys." "Yeah. Didn't you guys learn when you were kids that you can't judge a book by its cover?" Li Yundong felt a little awkward as he listened to their incessant chatter. This whole thing should be fun, but why am I feeling so uneasy? Pimple's face grew darker and darker. He placed a hand on Li Yundong's shoulder and said, "Why don't you try again? I refuse to believe that the result just now wasn't a mechanical malfunction." Li Yundong slapped the hand on his shoulder angrily. "I'm here to learn Taekwondo, not to hit a machine." Ever since Li Yundong had taken the Renyuan Jindan, his body had been filled with essence, qi, and blood. His eyes were like lightning, and his originally fat face was now filled with an aura that was not to be underestimated. This caused the eyes of some of the girls around him to light up. They nodded to themselves. "This guy sure is manly. It's not without reason that this little vixen likes him." Pimple subconsciously took a step back when Li Yundong glared at him. But he quickly regained his composure. He glared at Li Yundong and snorted. "Let's go then. Follow me into the dojo." Pimples led the way in front of Li Yundong, sneering inwardly. "Just wait and see how I'm going to trample on you later." Li Yundong was already thinking of leaving the dojo. But then he remembered that he had already paid 200 yuan in club fees, So he swallowed the urge and followed Pimples into the dojo. Recommend a new book by a newcomer. Everyone, go support the newcomer. Chapter 15. Chinese people love to join in on the fun. It was their nature. Seeing that there was something to see, even the people who had changed their clothes and were ready to leave didn't want to leave. They followed Li Yundong back to the dojo and sat or stood around it. Li Yundong entered the dojo and saw that it was a huge classroom that had been converted into a dojo. In the middle of the dojo hung the national flags of the two countries. Below the flags was the iconic Taekwondo high side kick. Below the flags were 3 banners with black words on a white background. Honor and decency, patience and indomitable. The dojo was about 200 square meters wide. It was very spacious, and the floor was covered with earthquake-resistant mats. White lines had been used to divide the dojo into several areas. Students in white Taekwondo uniforms were sitting cross-legged around the dojo. Su Chan followed Li Yundong, looking around curiously. But when her eyes fell on the students in the dojo, disappointment and disdain filled her eyes. Is this the combat skill that Yundong wants to learn? No way. How can you beat someone with these fancy moves? Su Chan had the urge to drag Li Yundong away and teach him herself. But when she looked up and saw Li Yundong's excited face, she didn't have the heart to spoil his fun. So she followed him with a long face. As soon as Li Yundong and the others entered the Taoist sanctum, the noisy crowd immediately attracted everyone's attention, and everyone's eyes looked at them. Li Yundong's eyes were sharp, and he saw that a man in Taekwondo uniform with a black belt was teaching in the middle of the dojo. It was Zhao Yujian, the guy who had confessed to Zhou Qin earlier. Sweat dripped from Zhao Yujian's forehead. He was tall and slender, with arms like an ape and a waist like a bee. His features were masculine and handsome. Most of the girls around him were staring at him with infatuated eyes. Even Li Yundong couldn't help but sigh sourly to himself. It's a waste that this guy isn't an actor. But what surprised Li Yundong was that when his eyes swept over the other area, he saw Zhou Qin and Ding Nan in Taekwondo uniforms sitting in the dojo. They were looking at him. When Li Yundong's eyes met Zhou Qin's, they were both a little stunned. Li Yundong nodded slightly at Zhou Qin to express his gratitude for her help last time. Zhou Qin was expressionless. She just glanced at him a little longer and then withdrew her gaze. Ding Nan looked at Li Yundong with interest, but Li Yundong hated this mean girl very much. He just glanced at her and then looked away. Pimple Man led Li Yundong to another area. As a new student, he said, "I'll be the one teaching you today. Do you have any objections?" Pimple Man held his belt with both hands. Li Yundong said, "I have an opinion. You have a prejudice against me. I don't want you to teach me." Pimple Man snorted coldly. "If you have a prejudice, then prove it to me that my prejudice is wrong. Didn't you come here to learn Taekwondo? I'm the second best here. It's your fortune to be able to teach you personally." Li Yundong was proud and arrogant. How could he stand someone talking to him like that? He sneered and turned to leave. Pimple Man laughed mockingly behind him. "Humph. I knew you'd run away. You're really good at that. Don't think you're so great just because you know how to run away. To put it nicely, it's called parkour. To put it bluntly, it's called running for your life." His words caused a stir among the surrounding students. The way they looked at Pimple Man became more and more disdainful and contemptuous. Li Yundong wasn't the only one who was furious. Even Su Chan was furious. "If you don't teach him a lesson, I'm going to teach him a lesson," Su Chan said to Li Yundong. Li Yundong grabbed her arm. Su Chan turned her head and glared at him. "What are you doing? Let go of me. How can you tolerate this kind of humiliation? I look down on you." Li Yundong glared at Pimple Man, his face dark. He pushed Su Chan behind him. Women shouldn't meddle in men's affairs. His words drew cheers from the surrounding boys. Pimple Man clapped his hands mockingly. "Well said. Well said. Come on, let us 2 men practice." Li Yundong stepped forward and sneered. "How do you want to practice? I'll keep you company." At that moment, everyone knew that a fight was about to break out. All the other students stopped their training and turned to look at Li Yundong. Even Zhao Yujin stopped what he was doing and turned to look at them. Zhao Yujin was about to step forward and stop the fight, but when he saw Su Chan standing next to Li Yundong, he was shocked. This girl was as pretty as Zhou Qin, and she was both angry and happy at the same time. Compared to Zhou Qin, who was usually cold and expressionless, she had an indescribable charm. Why would a beauty like her be with a guy like that? Zhao Yujin's heart sank. He subconsciously turned to look at Zhou Qin. When he did, he saw that Zhou Qin was staring at Li Yundong with a curious and amused expression. Zhao Yujin sneered inwardly. He crossed his arms in front of his chest and prepared to watch Pimpleman humiliate Li Yundong. He knew Pimpleman's strength very well. Even though he was only a red belt, that was last year's grading test. This year, he was already a red and black belt, which was not far off from Zhao Yujin's black belt. Not to mention, this guy was born with great strength. He could easily take on a couple of gangsters with his bare hands, much less a fat otaku. Pimpleman waved at the student next to him and asked for a pad to cover his chest. Then, he tossed it to Li Yundong. Since you want to learn Taekwondo, I'll show you the powerful side kick of Taekwondo, he said. The students around him gasped in shock and began to worry for Li Yundong. The side kick was Pimpleman's trump card. It had a force of more than 1,000 pounds. Even a normal person holding a pad would be sent flying by his kick. Pimpleman obviously didn't have any good intentions when he asked Li Yundong to hold the pad. Li Yundong placed the pad across his chest and sneered. The way he saw it, being kicked flying was better than being a coward. Other than that, he didn't have any other thoughts. No one knew that Li Yundong's current state was in line with the realm of the unity of the heart and mind, the unity of the mind and spirit, the unity of the spirit and qi, the unity of the qi and strength, and the unity of the mind, spirit, qi, and strength. Pimpleman twisted his head and rubbed his wrists. He kept hopping around. After warming up for a while, he crooked his finger at Li Yundong. Hey, are you done yet? Li Yundong gritted his teeth. I'm done. Good. Pimpleman sucked in a deep breath and turned around. Using his body weight, the explosive power of his muscles, and the acceleration of his body, he delivered a powerful kick to Li Yundong's chest. The kick landed squarely on Li Yundong's chest. Li Yundong was still holding the pad with both hands, but it was still some distance away from his chest. Pimpleman's kick landed on the pad, causing it to cave in. But when his foot landed on Li Yundong's body, Li Yundong's entire body suddenly erupted with a powerful force. With a violent jolt, Pimpleman was sent flying. Su Chan burst into laughter. Didn't Li Yundong send me flying when he first took the Renyuan Jindan? Su Chan thought. Everyone around them was dumbfounded. Never in their wildest dreams would they have thought that the person who was sent flying was Pimpleman. Zheng Qing. What the hell are you doing? Zhao Yujin, who was watching the fight from the sidelines, frowned. Zheng Qing crawled up from the ground. He was now riding a tiger, and there was no turning back. His face was flushed red. He glared at Zhao Yujin and said, "It's nothing. I just slipped." Zhao Yujin sneered, but he didn't point out Zheng Qing's lie. Zheng Qing walked up to Li Yundong and said angrily, "How can you hold the pad like this?" "Then how should I hold it?" Li Yundong asked coldly. Zheng Qing snatched the pad from Li Yundong's hand and placed it across his chest. "Hold it like this," he said. "Don't use your body to block it, or you'll get hurt." "But I don't think the one holding the pad is the one who got hurt." Feng Na chimed in. Zheng Qing glared at Feng Na, then turned to Li Yundong and said, "Why don't you kick it? I'll show you how to hold the pad." Zheng Qing's face turned red. Despite his words, Zheng Qing was gritting his teeth in anger. "Just you wait. You'll know what it's like to be sent flying by the rebound force." Zheng Qing had been lucky earlier, so he hadn't hurt his tendons or bones. But now, he was determined to give Li Yundong a hard time. The moment Li Yundong's kick landed on the pad, his own pad tilted to one side. Humph. Li Yundong walked up to Zheng Qing expressionlessly and said, "Can I start now?" Zheng Qing took a lunging stance and turned his body sideways to face Li Yundong, holding the pads in front of him. Some of the students who understood what was going on saw this scene and secretly felt that Zheng Qing was a despicable person. Even the students who didn't understand Zheng Qing's intentions knew that Zheng Qing's feet were powerful. When he took a lunge stance, Anyone who kicked the pad would need at least a few 100 pounds of force to make him move. Li Yundong's eyes were fixed on the thick pad in front of Zhang Qing's chest. Then, imitating Zhang Qing's actions, he turned around and did a side kick, landing on the pad. Zhang Qing didn't even have time to react before he was sent flying again. This time, he was still holding the pad. He flew for more than 3 meters and slid on the ground for a long time. He only stopped when he hit the wall, holding his arms and wailing. Li Yundong was a little surprised. He finally understood that something had happened to his body. At the very least, his strength was many times greater than before. Otherwise, how could he have sent a red belt flying with a single kick? The surrounding students were in an uproar as they stared at Li Yundong in shock. The sight of this chubby guy sending Zhang Qing flying a few meters away with a single kick was too scary. Did that kick carry a ton of force? I don't know, but it's possible. That's just too scary. Zhang Qing's weight of 160 pounds, plus the strength of his lunge stance, but he was still sent flying so far. Hey, brother Zhang sent him flying twice in a row. Is that a threesome? Huh. You're so talented, bro. The students whispered to each other. When Su Chan saw that Li Yundong had vented his frustrations, she followed suit. She had long since grown tired of such showy combat skills. She tugged at Li Yundong's arm and said, "Let's go, Yundong. What's there to learn? What's the point of learning this? It's all showy but impractical. Nice to look at but useless." Su Chan's words caused the surrounding students, who were passionate about Taekwondo, to turn their heads and glare at her. Chapter 16. Never in his wildest dreams would he have imagined that it would be so difficult for him to learn Taekwondo. He looked at Su Chan helplessly, then at Zhao Yujian, who was pushing his way through the crowd with a savage look on his face. Su Chan raised her head slightly. Her delicate and beautiful face was full of pride and disdain, as if what she had just said was the truth of the world. Li Yundong could feel his head starting to hurt. This girl is such a pain in the ass. Ever since I met her, I've been in trouble. What he didn't know was that since ancient times, no one who had a vixen by their side had ever come to a good end. According to the history books, the biggest similarity between Xia Jia, Shang Zhou, and Zhou Yu was not that they were all tyrants or incompetent rulers, but that they all had a vixen by their side. Li Yundong didn't know that the little beauty beside him was a vixen, but he did know that since ancient times, trouble had always accompanied women. The prettier the woman, the bigger the trouble. Li Yundong sighed. I just want to learn Taekwondo. Do you really have to go through all this? Zhao Yujian walked up to him with a cold smile. You've already insulted Taekwondo. You have to apologize. Before Li Yundong could say anything, Su Chan interrupted him. Did I say anything wrong? If this isn't showy but impractical, then what is it? Yundong can beat you all with one hand. What the hell? Are women born to manipulate people? Li Yundong almost jumped up to cover Su Chan's mouth. Zhao Yujian threw his head back and laughed. I'll be waiting for you over there, he said, pointing at the center of the arena. As he spoke, he stormed towards the arena. When the students saw him walking over, they all made way for him. They all had different expressions on their faces. Some were angry, some were eager to see the world in chaos, and some were calm. Li Yundong looked at Su Chan and sighed. My dear lady, he said. You really think too highly of me. Su Chan patted Li Yundong on the shoulder and said, It's okay. Didn't you send that guy flying with a kick just now? Li Yundong sighed. That wasn't a fight. Zhao Yujian is a city-level champion. I haven't even trained for a day. You don't think I can beat him, do you? Su Chan was stunned and thought, that's right. Although Li Yundong has the divine power of Jin Dan to protect his body, he can't just take a beating. However, she quickly rolled her eyes and came up with a brilliant idea. I'll tell you one move, and you'll definitely win. What is it? Li Yundong asked curiously as well. Su Chan said, if he punches you, hit his fists. If he kicks you, hit his feet. When Li Yundong heard this, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. What kind of good idea was this? What if *King absolute victory? Zhao Yujian stood in the middle of the field, 5 feet away. He gripped his black belt with both hands. Are you done yet? If I don't make you sincerely apologize today, my surname isn't Zhao. Li Yundong was a docile donkey with a stubborn personality. If Zhao Yujian had tried to reason with him, then he would have apologized on Su Chan's behalf. But if Zhao Yujian wanted to teach him a lesson with his fists, then there was nothing he could say. Zhao Yujian, you may be powerful, but I'm not a weakling. Even if I lose, I won't lose. I'll do it. Li Yundong raised an eyebrow. He steeled his resolve and strode over to Zhao Yujian. When the two of them reached the field, the students around them gathered around the white line. Some of them were sitting, while others were standing. Even Xueqi and Ding Nan, who had always been aloof from the world, stood up and stared at the field with bright eyes. Who do you think will win? Ding Nan couldn't help but ask Xueqi. What do you think? Xueqi asked. Ding Nan thought for a moment. I know Zhao Yujian is a hypocrite, and I hate him, but I still think he'll win. After all, he didn't win the city championship for nothing. Xueqi smiled faintly. Wanna bet? Ding Nan giggled. What bet? Xueqi looked at the field and said casually, my handbag. Don't you want it? Ding Nan's eyes lit up. LV09 Autumn Limited Edition handbag? Okay, I'll bet. I bet Zhao Yujian will win. Xueqi smiled. I bet Li Yundong will win. Ding Nan gave Xueqi a puzzled look. Why are you so sure that this guy will win? Intuition, Xueqi said casually. Ding Nan laughed. I can't believe that your intuition is so accurate every time. Xueqi just smiled and looked at the field calmly. Zhao Yujian was already warming up his joints. He didn't underestimate his opponent at all. On the contrary, he was carefully sizing up his opponent. His cautious demeanor made the students around him feel sorry for him. They looked at Li Yundong sympathetically. This guy is going to get beaten up pretty badly. Su Chan was the only one who didn't care. She cupped her hands around her mouth and shouted, Li Yundong, you can do it. You'll win. Li Yundong turned his face away and laughed dryly. Then, he turned his face away again, searching for the same feeling he'd felt when he'd punched Zhang Qing twice. But no matter how hard he tried, the feeling never appeared. It was just like Duan Yu's six-pulse magic sword. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. Before Li Yundong could find the feeling, Zhao Yujian walked up to him. Are you ready? Li Yundong asked. Li Yundong had been forced to do more than he could chew. He braced himself and said, I'm ready. Since they'd already fallen out, Zhao Yujian didn't bother with the formalities of bowing to each other before the fight. Instead, he hopped around Li Yundong's side. Zhao Yujian was the city-level champion. His footwork was fast and nimble. His upper body swayed as he tested his opponent's strength. His legs crossed like a pair of scissors. Every cross looked powerful, like a folding knife that could pop out at any moment. The students around him were dazzled by Zhao Yujian's footwork. Some of the starry-eyed girls even covered their mouths and exclaimed, Butterfly steps. It's butterfly steps. Li Yundong watched as Zhao Yujian darted around him. Even though Li Yundong didn't have much actual combat experience, he knew the basics of combat. Follow your opponent's movements. Don't let your opponent attack your back or waist. Don't let your opponent attack you from behind. The two of them circled around the court for a while. Zhao Yujian was starting to get impatient. He stopped testing Li Yundong and suddenly stepped into a cross step. His right leg bounced off the ground, and with a loud thud, he launched a sweeping kick at Li Yundong's waist. Zhao Yujian's kick was so fast that Li Yundong's pants whizzed through the air like a whip. Before Li Yundong could react, he felt a sharp pain in his waist. Li Yundong remembered what Su Chan had taught him, so he let out a low growl and threw a punch at Zhao Yujian's leg. However, Zhao Yujian's leg technique was so fast that he pulled his leg back immediately after the kick connected. Then, he followed up with a flying kick that landed solidly on the other side of Li Yundong's abdomen. Li Yundong reflexively tried to block the kick with his hand, but as soon as he did so, another kick came at him. Zhao Yujian's legs were as fast as a whip and as fast as the wind. They landed on Li Yundong's waist again and again. The sound of the kicks was so loud that it made the hair on the back of everyone's neck stand on end. Ding Nan looked at Xueqi proudly. Looks like I'm going to get a new bag. Xueqi didn't bat an eyelid. He who laughs last laughs best, she said. All of a sudden, Li Yundong spun around as if he was trying to escape. Zhao Yujin chuckled coldly and caught up with him. Zhao Yujin turned his heel over his head and delivered a ferocious overhead kick straight at Li Yundong's head. Zhao Yujin's eyes widened in shock. The students around him jumped to their feet. If that kick landed, Li Yundong would at least suffer a concussion. Is Zhao Yujin crazy? Li Yundong isn't wearing any protective gear. Is he trying to kill someone? Li Yundong seemed to have sensed what was going on behind him. He turned around and threw a punch at Zhao Yujin's calf. He still remembered Su Chan's words. If Zhao Yujin punches me, I'll hit him. If Zhao Yujin kicks me, I'll hit him. If someone who was proficient in fighting heard this sentence, he would probably burst out laughing. It was completely reckless, but Li Yundong had no choice. He had the divine power of Jindan, but he didn't know how to use it. This could be considered as trying to find a doctor in a desperate situation. Zhao Yujin snorted coldly. He abruptly twisted his leg and kicked Li Yundong in the back of the neck. Li Yundong staggered a few steps back. Zhao Yujin snorted coldly and twisted his leg in midair. This leg break was extremely stunning. The surrounding students all cried out in surprise. Flying swallow drop. If Li Yundong didn't have the protection of a Jindan, that kick would have caused serious damage to his neck. If Zhao Yujin had stopped while he was ahead, the whole thing would have been over. But Zhao Yujin subconsciously glanced at Zhou Qin, who was standing next to him. He saw that Zhou Qin was staring at Li Yundong. Zhou Qin, who was usually calm and collected, was frowning as if she was worried about Li Yundong. Zhao Yujin felt like his brain was about to explode. He wanted nothing more than to kick the bastard in front of him to death. Gritting his teeth, Zhao Yujin's eyes flashed with ferocity. He took a few quick steps forward and suddenly leaped into the air. With a somersault, he sent a side kick straight at Li Yundong's chest. This was the most powerful move in Taekwondo. It concentrated almost all of the weight and strength in the body into the kick, so the kick carried more than 1,000 pounds of force. Li Yundong's body swayed as Zhao Yujin's kick landed on him. He knew that he was far weaker than Zhao Yujin in terms of fighting skills. Since he wasn't injured, he might as well admit defeat. But then Zhao Yujin lunged at Li Yundong aggressively. Li Yundong felt a surge of anger rise in his chest. Even a man made of clay has a temper. Not to mention someone like Zhao Yujin. The heat rose from Li Yundong's lower abdomen and spread through his entire body like steam from a pressure cooker. It rushed out of the top of Li Yundong's head and made his hair stand on end. Li Yundong could clearly see Zhao Yujin's movements as he leaped into the air. It was as if he was watching a movie in slow motion. Zhao Yujin did a somersault in the air and did a slow side kick. He lowered his body and threw a heavy punch at the sole of his opponent's foot. Bang! Zhao Yujin's body flew more than a meter away before crashing into the ground. Clutching his calf, he let out a heart-wrenching scream. The students in the ring were dumbfounded. They couldn't imagine how Zhao Yujin, who had the upper hand just a moment ago, could suddenly lose so badly. Especially when they turned to look at Li Yundong. His hair, which had been standing on end a moment ago, was now slowly falling back to the ground. The bizarre scene shocked them even more. While everyone was still in shock, Su Chan rushed to Zhao Yujin's side and pressed a few acupoints on his calf and torso to relieve some of the pain. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.